Good morning, Your Worship. Good morning, councillors. To members of the public that are here this morning, good morning and welcome, and to our media staff as well. Good morning and welcome to our Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting for today, the 4th of November. Are there any apologies, please? Councillor Gould, is that for the lateness or is he absent for the lateness? Thank you very much. Thank you. May I have a move and a seconder, please, that apology for lateness for Councillor Gould be received. All those in... Oh, thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Hunt. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you. Are there any declarations of interest? Yes, thank you, Councillor Stewart.
Member of the Lakes DHB. I don't have a conflict of interest. I have a joint interest in the outcome with the library.
Thank you.
As so do you.
Thank you, yes, and I will also signal an interest in being a DHB member as well. Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Are there any matters for urgent business? Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand I was informed yesterday by a staff member that council has made a purchase in Te Tanakai Street of a building for the purpose of toilets and storage of night market gear. Is this in fact true or not?
I don't know about that.
Order, Madam Chair.
Yes.
Wouldn't that be an item that comes back to an ops and monitoring in the CEO's report?
Yes, it would be. Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes.
The Bentley is making is that has it been purchased, in which case it's a fat lot of good coming back to us at a later date.
Well, if it's been purchased, then it's been purchased. I'm not aware of it. And as we have a full agenda for today, and the CEO has just signalled he's not aware of it. So as we do have a full agenda, I'm not going to be allowing that item to be discussed at this point in time. So, do you have an item of urgent business, Councillor Kent?
Madam Chair, it's actually a matter of querying the recommendation 5 being held in confidential. I do not believe that the reason given for item 5 to be heard in confidential is satisfactory, and I move that that item be moved into open forum to be heard in public.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Oh, yes, yes, Councillor. Sorry, yes, Your Worship.
I don't accept that. There are commercial sensitivities at this stage with the Capital Committee in Wellington. I think it is better that it remains where it is. I will not support that motion.
Thank you. And the minutes from that item will be made public straight after, after the council meeting on the 17th of December. So, thank you. Is it a matter of urgent business?
So what?
Thank you.
There are certain reasons why a committee or a council goes into committee. What is the reason in this case? I believe the public has a right to know those figures. Otherwise, there's no clarity in the community as to any decisions we might make.
Thank you, yes.
And that regard is in regard to what councillors at this table may vote for or against.
Yes, thank you. I'll allow our CEO to respond to that one.
Councillors, that there are matters within the decision that have got significant commercial implications to them, that if this discussion was held in open would actually become public and would actually cause prejudice to some of the decision making. I can't go further than that other than to say that is the case and is alluded to for the reason actually in the report. What you can do following the discussion actually on the item is to make a decision at the end of the confidential section as to what it is that you wish to actually make public.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Williams. Thank you. I'm happy with that explanation, and we'll now proceed with the agenda items.
I think it's important that is supported because all the discussions the DHB has had has been in confidential at this stage, and a Crown entity's involved, and I think there is an out that the minutes will be released, so we're not hiding anything from the public. The reality is the commercial sensitivities with the Crown entity and the confidentiality of that at that stage. Let's have a robust debate in confidence, but let's assure our public out there that the matters discussed and itemised in the confidential will be made public in due course.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sturt. Item number 4 on our agenda, confirmation of minutes. These are the minutes of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting of 16th of September 2015. May I have a mover and a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Wepper. Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. Are there any matters arising from the... Thank you, Councillor Sharank, seconded by Councillor Sharank. I'll put that motion that they're a true and correct record. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you. The minutes of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Extraordinary Committee meeting held on the 14th of October 2015. May I have a mover and a seconder, please, for the motion? Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Any matters? Yes, Councillor Sturt.
On page 29, under the recommendation 1, it was alluded there that the committee recommend to council to adopt the recommendations to proceed with the wider public consultation on the preliminary preferred option to the Whakarewarewa land treatment system as agreed with the Rotorua Project Steering Committee. I hope that our strategy has been developed and will be reported back at our December meeting on how that process, the timings and how that's going to be detailed in terms of stakeholder involvement, etc., because I think this is an absolute crucial situation that this be handled in the appropriate manner.
Can I just have a clarification? I thought it was early in the new year the report back was coming. I think so, wasn't Councillor? Yes, I believe so.
There are formal decision points, and certainly they go into next year, but we will actually report back to you progress on that project in the December period.
Thank you for raising it, Councillor Sturt. Thank you. I'll put that motion then about the minutes. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary, thank you. The first of our staff reports this morning, and we do have obviously quite a number of them, and this is around the City Focus refresh. May I have a mover and a seconder, please, to receive the report? Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Thank you, Your Worship. All those in favour of the report being received, please say aye. Contrary, thank you. Before I invite JP to speak to the report, I'd like to now signal that it is my intention to put forward a new recommendation to this report. Thank you. JP, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, we have Portia and Lee from Bespoke, who was the landscape architect firm who produced Concept 3, and which has formed the basis of the refined concept plan included in this report. Madam Chair, just by way of another request, can we seek your leave as the chair to allow Mike Steiner from the Inner City Steering Group and also Hilda and a couple of other members of the Block Champions to also present their views of where we've got to. Madam Chair, as I've signalled in the report, at your decision making around the LTP, you referred the differing views around what needed to happen on the inner city back to the steering group for their views. So this would be their opportunity really to speak to those. And I suppose, Madam Chair, if you're comfortable with them presenting, maybe it might be useful then to hold the questions from their presentation until after Portia has also introduced the item as well.
Thank you. JP, I'm a little reluctant to invite 4 speakers to speak. I'm happy to take 2. If you could decide amongst yourselves, I'm happy to take 2, because then we have a full presentation from our own staff, and then we'll have questions, and then we'll have some discussion. So this is quite a process. So I'm happy to accommodate in that way. That be... Thank you.
Madam Chair, I presume then that will be Mike and Hilda presenting.
Thank you very much. Yes, please come up, and you're most welcome to come up to this, sit up there. You can put your microphone on if you like. Thank you, yes. It might.
How's that?
That's fine.
Is that better?
Yes, you are being screened.
Thank you.
You're going out
Thank
to the
you.
millions.
Thank you. With your approval, Madam Chair, we have some written notes and we would like to distribute those. Could you? Thank you. The people here behind me are representative of the business community, and they are here in support of this presentation. It's not a coup. We speak by consensus of the business community, the stakeholders and the wider inner city. We are here to endorse Council's mandate for growth, development and stimulation of economic activity, particularly and specifically as it affects us in the inner city. We need to say congratulations. We've seen a remarkable turnaround in the last 18 months. 2.5 years ago, Rotorua virtually achieved economic stagnation. We had no growth, little or no investment, scant development, declining population, and an unprecedented debt level of some reported $168 million, with no clear vision or plan for the future. Our beautiful city, and it was just as beautiful then as it is now, that's notwithstanding the boost our very successful Tulip Festival has just contributed. It was perceived and considered to be a smelly town with high crime and behavioural problems, little or poor employment opportunities, no capital growth, little investment opportunities, and a lot of bad press. This was well documented in the media and opinions sought by the wider community. Indeed, 2 Christmases ago, the community met on a weekly basis to endeavour to address the disruptive, embarrassing, and the volatile behaviour that were on our streets. That problem has simply disappeared. Today, we see a 360-degree about-face. Not since the early 70s or 80s have we encountered such economic growth and activity. The statistics speak for themselves. Electronic purchases are up 6.2% compared with the national average, which is 3.3%. Accommodation visitor nights booked are up 8.8%, where the national average is 5.4%. Attractions and activities visits are up 12.2%, where the national average is 7.8%. New dwelling building consents in September 2014 were 2. This September there was 15. LIMs applied for last September were 56. This September 107. Trade Me jobs are listing 11% more jobs this year compared for the same time last year. And when did we ever see headlines like this? Workers wanted. How significant. Commercial building consents are the highest level since 2010, with 251 being processed, up from 227. The number of subdivisions producing new titles have doubled in the last year. The value of building consents issued by Rotorua Lakes Council in the first 5 months of 2015 reached 35.1 million, a 300% increase on a previous year. GDP, and when did Rotorua ever feature in GDP, is up 5% when the national average is only 2.3. Last year, 433 people moved to the district in 2014, where previous years we had a declining population. House sales are up 52% on this time last year, compared with 8.3% nationwide. And our reported debt levels at this stage are $167 million. The suggestion has been made that we, the business community, are pushing its own barrel. Well, we, the business in this community, indeed every community, put their economic lives on the line every day to provide employment. Collectively, we are substantial employers, to pay rents, rates, power, etc., to expend energies, to stimulate and generate vital economic activity, to support our communities to survive, and we do this regardless and in spite of good or indifferent trading conditions. It's important to canvass the community input, but especially, vitally important, to listen to stakeholders. It's our money at risk on a daily basis. We need to impart to you how necessary and vital your economic policies, strategies, visions and plans are. The collaborative and consultative process with the business community that Council has put in place in the last 2 years has been so successful. A lot of work by a lot of people, a community pulling together for each and everyone's benefit and future. Not just words any longer, not just dinner table conversations. True, meaningful relationships have been forged and developed under this new direction, as we assure those of you who have sat at this table for a number of years must agree. This is a new and invigorating time. Today, you are to consider and approve proposals for the next step in our inner city revitalisation. These proposals have had many conversations and consultations within the business and the wider community, and there is an air of excitement by us and the wider community that change is vital, good and necessary for the continued growth and stimulation of the economic activity. In the proposals you are to consider, it's important to note that in all previous work done by a number of consultants commissioned by Council over the last 10 years for the revitalisation of the inner city, that all planners emphasise strengthening the spine of Tutanako Street, opening it to better sightlines and connecting it from Rotorua Central to the lakefront. Strengthening the spine would lead to better commercial activity to adjoining streets, and increasing the movement and flow of traffic, both vehicular and pedestrian, will provide a much needed connectivity to the inner city. The city focus in its present form blocks and cuts our inner city in two. When the Inner City Focus Group was formed, our philosophy, apart from forging better relationships with Council, was to concentrate on the strengthening of the spine to Tutanako Street. The small amount of expenditure already invested, i.e. intersection upgrades, art installations, murals, etc., have greatly enhanced and contributed to the increase in economic activity and change of perception that has led people back into the inner city. So we cannot emphasise enough how vital it is to continue this momentum. Hilda Duffy, Salon St Bruno, Deborah Kay, Harvey World Travel, and Sharon Rehu, Pasco's Jewellers, 3 businesses directly affected by this proposal, are here to support this, and Hilda will briefly address you. Could we just acknowledge and say thank you for your time, and in closing we would acknowledge in particular the commitment, the time, energy and valuable input Councillor Hunt and her team have given to us on the revitalisation portfolio. Thank you, Councillor Hunt, and thank you, Madam Chair, Your Worship and Councillors.
Thank you very much, Mike. Hilda, good morning and thank you.
Hi, so I'm Hilda Duffy, and I hope I can be as humble as the ABs were in the weekend. So I was born in Rotorua 53 years ago, and I started my first business at the age of 19. My parents were business owners who travelled over from England 40 years ago, and they owned a business here in Rotorua for 30 years. I have 2 children. They currently both live, reside, work in Rotorua. They both own their own houses. I chose recently to move to the city focus area as Salon St Bruno, as I knew a change would be near for this area. The view from my reception, where I reside, most probably on average 40 to 50 hours a week, over the last 6 months has been great. The riffraff has moved on with the help of a little bit of more pride in the business owners. They've taken up the stores, cleaned them up, and the City Guardians a huge impact on improving these groups and help moving them on. But I feel this is where we can't become complacent. And someone that pays top rent, top rates, water rates, registrations, and all the rest of it, I feel I have a right to my opinion heard, especially for this area being right on my doorstep. A shared area I felt would work really, really well. The traffic outside my shop are so obliging, they're courteous to any pedestrians crossing, they never speed and they take true care. I would like to see a clear vision from one end of the Tutanako Street where lies Eat Street and right through to the other end where Central Mall resides. To be able to give our tourists clear directions from one area down to the other, would be able to send someone in a car in the easiest route down to our world-class Polynesian spa. Most of all, I would appreciate that my staff of 13 of them will be able to sit, see and feel the sun, not shadowed, hemmed in with signs and buildings and sit in a wind tunnel created by the area itself. If nothing else, we need to think that the past is the past. It is time for us to think of the city for the future, which is what will, for the younger city residers, what they want. If any of us follow what is actually driving growth, it is the younger generation. And their key to life is very, very simple. In many ways, all they want is change. They thrive on it, they need it, and we need to grab it, and we need to go with it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your very full commentary in support of the report. Thank you. JP, now I'll ask for a staff presentation.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So Portia is just going to take us through the report in more detail, Madam Chair, and she will also just have Lee to assist her, and certainly as you move into the question phase, Lee's assistance may be of value at that space. So I'll just hand over now to Portia.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Mayor and Councillors. So today I'm going to take you through the report that you see in your agenda today, but not in so much detail in the report. I'm going to talk about the process that we've got to get us here today, and I also have Lee from Bespoke, who is the designer who's worked on the concept and refined it to what we see today as well. And he'll be available for comments and questions if you need. So that's just our agenda today, where we're up to. So you'll remember back at the last couple of SPNF committee meetings ago, I took you through the history that got us here today. So I'll just, as a reminder, go over that. So back in 2013, we started this conversation with the inner city stakeholders, the inner city focus group and our steering group, of which a lot of the conversations have come back to City Focus and the issues that the inner city businesses are facing around City Focus. So it has been a lot of conversation in the last couple of years around it. So what we did to understand what the economic impact of City Focus actually is, we undertook a consultant came up from Wellington to assess the information that we had, and that was the vehicle movements around the City Focus, the value of the buildings around City Focus, the transactions compared to other parts of the city. And they came back and they said, yes, while it's not the silver bullet, there are other initiatives that you need to undertake. The changes to City Focus will have an impact on the city. Also, over the last few years, we've undertaken quite a few strategies. The 2006 Opus report of the inner city revitalisation also mentions in there that the City Focus needs to be addressed, and they mention vehicle movements and making sure that we get the sightlines right. 2010, the Brewer-Davidson report, the Urban Design Framework, also mentions City Focus. There's a couple of pages in there that it needs to be addressed. In 2013, of course, the Rotorua 2030 brought the inner city into the limelight and said we need to make sure that the inner city has a vibrant city heart by 2016. The public consultation that we've undertaken before the last round, we did 2 lots back in January. We had the ideas store, of which we asked the question, would you like to see a review of City Focus this year? Then our second round of consultation in the long-term plan, which was, the question was asked, would you like to see City Focus removed entirely? And I'll get to the feedback received on that. So we've already done 2 rounds of consultations before we got to develop the concepts. Of course, the long-term plan deliberations, we were asked to go back to the steering group and refine some concepts. What does change actually look like? So that the public could have a look at those concepts and say, yes, you're on the right track, or no, we need a little bit of tweaking here and there. So that helped us develop those concepts. We went out to public consultation on those concepts in the ideas store back in September. For 4 weeks we were open, and we had a lot of people come through our door and have a good conversation about City Focus in there. And then, of course, we took all of that feedback and refined it down to the preferred concept of what you can make a decision on today. So that just gives the history. It's been a couple of years in the making to get to this point today, but also those previous historical reports as well. So in terms of the feedback that we've seen around the 3 rounds of consultation, the first round, of course, back in the ideas store, and the question was, keeping it quite high level to understand what the public wanted was, do you want us to review City Focus this year? The majority of which came back and said, yes, we would like to see you consider City Focus this year. So, all right, so we went out in the long-term plan and said, trying to understand what change actually looks like, do you want to see City Focus removed entirely? And, of course, we only got 19 submissions to that point in the long-term plan, but of which 13 of them said, no, we don't want it removed entirely. So at that point, we're starting to understand, yes, we want to see some change, but we don't want it removed entirely. Then the concepts that were developed in the last round of consultation, would you like to see City Focus refreshed? The majority of people selected an option or a combination of options. And you can see there in the red, there were some people that said no, status quo, but it's very clear that the people came back and said, yes, one of these options or a combination of options is what I want to see. So of the people that chose change, this is what they were generally, what it generally looks like. So concept 3 was coming through quite clear as the preferred concept. There's a lot of people also saying that they wanted to see a combination of the concepts. Within the combination of concepts, the majority of people, about 50% of them, were picking concept 3 and elements of the other concepts to combine together. So that is why Bespoke is here today, because they were the people who developed up concept 3 and took it forward into that refined concept. So the main objectives around what change looks like, which was coming through the rounds of consultation, was the clear sightlines. And you'll remember some of those images that I put up in the last presentation. The clear sightlines are around a number of issues, and that is the building. A lot of the trees are overgrown now, and also some of the pillars are getting in the way of seeing the view shaft up and down to Tanakai Street, and also Hinamoa Street to the Caldera Rim and down to the Polly Pools as well. And it's also the clearing out of the sightlines is making sure that we can see the buildings and see the businesses that are available there, and that encourages people to continue to walk down. The vehicle movement has often been mentioned as well, making sure that people can get to business frontages rather than going right around again. But also coming through very clearly was a place for the people, and making sure that people have that opportunity to have the priority. It's not just about the vehicles coming through, it's actually more about the people. And you remember the question that we asked, do you want to see City Focus removed entirely? And the majority saying no, because they don't want to see it going back to a typical intersection. They don't want it to look like Pukuatua Street or Uruwera Street, where it's mostly about the traffic. They want it to look clearly, distinctly different from the other intersections and more about the people. So these are the key themes that were coming through from the feedback. There was clear support for the cultural design and the meaning of City Focus and the connection of Hinamoa and Tanakai Street being the intersection of the two lovers. There was a clear, a lot of people were talking about the mist-scape systems, the geothermal coming through and building on our uniqueness, making sure that when people visit City Focus, they know that it's all about, it's about Rotorua, and that's what our point of difference is. People were talking about the inclusion of wood and the weaving themes that were coming through, and the lighting and the sculptural elements, making sure that it's a place that has a wow factor as well. There was talk about having more green space, so the final concept that you have before you today has a lot more green space than the original concept 3 does. and making sure that those green spaces are flexible spaces for the businesses to use and to spill out onto as well. Making sure that there's a prioritising the pedestrians over the cars, but making sure that there's enough safety elements so that it's very clear that yes, cars can come through, but you have to be aware. And there was also a lot of mention of an information kiosk. So if the building within City Focus comes down, is there still enough information for people? Where do they go to get information, or is there information there available for them? So within the report, you'll see the 3 options that you have before you today. Option 1 is the developed, refined concept. So taking concept 3 through and taking into consideration all of the feedback, listening to the people, taking that feedback and refining the concept down again. So that's option 1. Option 2 is, of course, the option from the steering group and the block champions. They would like to see the pillars gone onto Tanakai Street because they believe that it doesn't achieve the objectives of the objectives of the sightlines, and we'll get to that next. And of course, option 3, what you have, you always have the option that you could keep it as status quo. Option 1 is the recommendation of the officers currently, because it is the understanding that in the long-term plan deliberations that you liked us to see a concept developed that retains the sales. Now, if I've got that interpretation of the long-term plan deliberations wrong, then it is officers' recommendations to go with option 2. And that is to support the steering group and the block champions and their recommendations to take that forward. So that those are the 2 options of the officer's recommendation. And of course, you've always got option 3. So going into the views of the steering group and the block champions. So this is option 1, retaining the pillars and the sails. While this option achieves most of the sightlines with clearing out some of the vegetation in the building, it does not achieve the one remaining sightline, which is up and down to Tanakai Street with the pillars, the concrete pillars, which are right in the middle of the intersection. So the block champions in the steering group would like you to consider removal of those pillars. As a consequence, of course, the sails are part of that as well. And this is just one of the perspectives you can see with them gone as well. And then, of course, coming back the other way from looking north towards the lake, those pillars again are also hiding other businesses as well. You can see Starbucks in the distance there. It's a much clearer view with them gone. So that is your choice today. So the refined concept, this is the one without the with the pillars gone. In terms of the budget, and as I've stated in the report, options 1 and 2, we've undertaken an estimate, and that's come in at 1 to 1.2 million. And this can be achieved within our existing budgets. So the Inner City Revitalisation Strategy budget in the long-term plan allocated 1.3 million per year for the first 3 years towards revitalising our inner city. This project can be achieved over 2 financial years within our existing budgets. In terms of the staging, what we'd like to do is, if you agree today to either options 1 or 2, would be to demolish the building before Christmas, to continue that momentum and to clear it out for the businesses. And then that will allow us to get detailed design underway and to get a tender out for construction as well. And of course, stage 2 going through into next year. What we did a couple of weeks ago was walk all of the businesses within those 4 blocks in Hinamara and Tanakai Street. for 59 businesses that we visited over 2 days to understand if one of these options were selected, what would be the best period that would not disrupt your business. So, and that just, so that we're not disrupting their economic ability as well. So, and the majority of them said after Easter and before the July school holidays. So that's what we'd be aiming towards. So at this point, that concludes my presentation. Madam Chair, Lee from Bespoke also has some slides as well, but it's up to you if you'd like him to go through the detail around the design, or if you'd like to go to questions and points of clarification now.
Yes, thank you very much, Portia, and to you and your team, because this has been a piece of ongoing work for the last couple of years. So, and when you put it up there, it's very clear how much work has been done over that period of time. So, thank you very much for that. JP, before we continue, JP, is there anything you'd like to add at this point in time?
Madam Chair, I suppose the only thing I could reiterate was the issues that we were trying to address with the concept plan. So it formed the part of the brief that was provided to the three sets of architects or landscape architects was addressing the sightlines, the traffic movement, but also the importance of retaining a viable and effective public space. And Madam Chair, as Portia has also stated, the reason why this report suggests option one, which was the retention of the sales, was the sense that we took from this committee's steer during those LTP deliberations. So that was the retention of the sales and obviously the importance of the public space. Though having said that, Madam Chair, if we take the advice of the landscape architects and the block champions and inner city steering group, we really do fail to properly address the sight lines by going with that option one. So that's why if that isn't a condition, then we would certainly be recommending option two, which is to remove the sales.
Thank you, JP. Councillors, I'll be guided by you on this. If you would like to have some further information presented by Lee in terms of concept, I'm happy to take those now before we go into questions, if you'd like that. Yes, Your Worship?
I would appreciate it, because I've been poring over the diagrammatic, and it's never as clear as when we can actually I don't need to spend a lot of time, but I've got to get it visually. And so I'd like to see the option.
Seem to be a few nods around, so thank you. Lee, can I ask how long do you envisage your presentation to take?
The original presentation that I did have prepared was around 25 minutes, so possibly too long for this forum, but I can certainly run through the cultural narrative in terms of the diagram and the functional diagrams that have set up the spatial development of the space.
Thank you. Well, you'll have a maximum of 10 minutes. If you can do it within that, you're welcome.
Fine, fair enough. Have we got it? Now, for the purposes of this, sorry, councillors and me, you might need to turn, and because I might need to point a few things, or I can point. Okay, but then everyone else can't see where I'm pointing. Is
you point the pointer forward. We'll adjust our heads.
Okay, so just reiterating what Portia had said, design refinement and feedback was informed by the consultation, and there was. I'll run through this, it's already been covered before, but there was a clear preference for Concept 3 or Concept 3 in combination of other options. Conceptual and spatial development was informed by a strong cultural narrative and by addressing the functional requirements. This is the cultural narrative that is intended to establish a sense of place and identity within the city focus area. There are four key themes that run through this cultural narrative diagram. The first is around the legend of Hinimoa and Tutanekai, and making sure that through the design they were given status and prominence within that. And those are then supported along with a really good landscape setting with two key transects that illustrate the geographical origins of the two lovers. There's then a reference to the 8 beating hearts of Te Aroa and the individuality of the hapu that they represent. And these are intended to provide a really strong physical and visual presence when you're entering in the space and a sense of identity. The third narrative that is coming through is the Mount Tarawera transect, and what we've done, just acknowledging the significance of Mount Tarawera, not only in Māori legend, but also in the disruption that it has caused to the residents of Rotorua over history, and the volcanic origins in the landscape and geothermal activity that has formed over time. And the way that we've expressed that through the design is first off, we established a series of grid lines that you'll see, the dash lines that run through the central space. And this is in reference to the urban form and the grid in that area. We then overlaid the Tarawera transect, illustrating the location of Mount Tarawera. And where those two the grid lines and the Tarawera transects intersect are key intersection points. We then rotated the grid to illustrate that disruption. And through the design, this has manifested an orientation towards key pedestrian desire lines through the concept itself, but also as a real spatial ordering element for some of the spaces. So weaving in that narrative fundamentally in terms of how that space works. And just quickly, finishing off on Kurau Park, first acknowledging the significance of green open space and the value that has in the inner city itself, but also giving reference to Kurau and the Tanewha that dragged down his wife and angered the gods and resulted in the resulting geothermal activity in the area and the landform. And so those have been fundamentally manifested in the design. So just quickly moving to the vehicular movements. So there is some significant change proposed to improve functionality and access within the inner focus area. The first is, like it's been discussed, establishing a really strong north-south connection along Tūtanakai Street, and then shared space connections to Hanimawa Street, offering improved connectivity with Hanimawa Street itself and choice in terms of traffic movements and access to the area. The north-south arrangement has been aligned to respect the positioning of Hanimawa and Tūtanakai, and the loops on either end of the road, or Hanimawa Street, or the adjustment of the positioning of the loops on the left-hand side there, just maintains that flexibility of traffic movement if you were to choose to close that space for larger events. The removal of the left-hand only turns within this environment is quite key in terms of the spatial configuration, because it does remove that severance or disconnect between the current central open space and the retail frontages. And as you can see with the configuration of this road alignment or vehicular movement, there are some very significant pieces of open space that are created and opportunities for connectivity and the provision of open space with the retail frontages. Pedestrian movement, that's quite obvious in this regard. There's clear north, south, east, west movements associated with the red dashed lines. We've just acknowledged key intersections that are primary entrances into the space and key opportunities for social interaction. The blue line represents the ability for people to filter through the central space area, and the green line just illustrates the approximate or the location of the green route, where, as it does through many other areas in the city, they come off-road and then share the quite significant width of space in the pavement with pedestrians in a slow-speed environment. So to the concept plan proper, we can clearly see, as I kind of discussed, that really strong north-south vehicular movement now through the space, and also the shared space connections that run into that north-south movement. Stepping back and looking at the plan on the broader scale, we can clearly see the green balance of green open spaces that are created by the adjustment of those vehicle movements, and the balance of hard and soft spaces that are provided, and the flexibility that they provide within the city focus itself. We have, you can clearly see the influence of the Mokoia and Owhara and Tarawera transects as key ordering elements and desire lines within the space. Those are further reinforced by acknowledging the geothermal activity associated with the Tarawera transects. These blue lines are the mistscape features that we've heard mentioned before in their location within the city focus. And in terms of the key spaces themselves, the key north-south spaces along to Tanakai Street, key transitional spaces really associated with providing a real sense of identity and a distinction that you are moving into a very unique slow-speed environment, so there are mechanisms in place for that transition in those areas to slow vehicular traffic and really allude to that sense of place moving to the Central Plaza area. And then flanked either side of the central, or kind of central plaza area, are the green open spaces. The one on the left-hand side, of course, references to Kūreo Park and sculptural mounding that we're seeing and anticipating as having a play value, so that sculptural play value that we talked about earlier has been referenced by through consultation. The geothermal elements, again, associated with the Kūreo narrative. And then just on the western open space, a more flexible open space, a flat open space that has the ability to accommodate stage, geothermal, and also sort of sculptural elements. And through the whole space, there is a real distinction between, in the design, between making sure that the shared spaces and the pedestrian spaces are really clearly delineated through planting and street furniture elements, so that there is a real distinction between where the vehicles are moving and where the pedestrians will be moving through the space as well. So that's probably my 10 minutes, and that generally in a nutshell covers, so I'm happy to field any further questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Lee. Now I'm very aware of what a landscape architect does, so thank you very much. Your Worship, Councillors, now's the opportunity for questions and points of clarification to the staff, and possibly if there is a question or two to be directed to Mike and Hilda, this is the opportunity. Please do not blur your questions with the discussions that will take place after the questions have been put, or any points of clarifications. So it's a time for questions at this point in time, clarification, and please keep your questions succinct. Councillor Bentley.
Just wishing to get some clarification on something, and a question for Mr. Gaston, and that even after councillors requested that option 4 be included, in actual fact, at the end of the day, it wasn't included, so nobody could give that a tick, because I know that many people went into that little kiosk thing, that took one look at the concepts, saw that the existing option wasn't going to be an option at all, and just turned around and walked out.
Madam Chair, when we discussed this, we talked about that the community always has the opportunity to say they don't like something and not to accept what's being put forward. And that's what we had in that environment, was the opportunity that they could have written down comments to say, no, I don't like what's being proposed at all, and we'd like to stay with the status quo. And that's certainly what we've received from, I think it's the approximately 10% of people who responded along those lines. So it sounds disappointing if people chose not to use the opportunity to provide that option for feedback, because that was certainly the intent. And as I say, councillors, you always have the decision-making ability now to decide that you do not wish to proceed, and that is detailed within the report.
Thank you. Your Worship?
Yes, I'm not sure who can answer my question, but when you look at how long this has lasted, the current arrangement, and then we're looking forward to 2030, can it be easily changed if one day we say we want the whole of Tūtanakai Street pedestrianised? How easy is it with this concept, you know, this dynamic really, to say we can actually move that next step without huge structural change?
In terms of full pedestrianisation of Tūtanakai Street, it is quite easy. You're creating a shared space within this area, and otherwise it's paved, it's amenable. There might be a few adjustments in terms of the positioning of certain elements that provide that separation between vehicular traffic and adjustment, or they may just well be functioning quite well and you'd leave them in place. It's not because the vehicle effectively there would not be any fundamental changes. Yep. I'm saying, I mean, there might be a few tweaks, but yeah, there's nothing precluding that from happening.
Thanks, Lee.
Councillor McVicker?
Can you clarify, please, Portia, the monetary allocation per annum to the CBD revitalisation? Was it $1 million over 10 years, or was it 1.3, as you mentioned, over immediate
Yes, so
future?
it's 1.3 for the first 3 years, and then from what I understand, it's 800,000 for the following 7 years. Yeah, per year, yes.
Thank you. Councillor Webber, then Councillor Sturt.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair, and I hope you don't mind, Madam Chair, if I just ask a few questions of detail. I'm just interested in your thinking. So the performance areas that people ask for, where would you envisage that they come up and down in those green spaces, either end of Hurnamoa? Is that where they would be?
Yeah, sure. So fundamentally, the design provides sort of a range of flexible open spaces. So not overly populating with a number of elements. So there is flexibility in that regard in terms of where they may occur within that area. Just providing the balance between green spaces and hard spaces. So you might have activities that you would prefer to be on soft areas. You might have them that you preferred on the harder areas, and that's why they provide. So other than the provision of the stage itself. The rest of the design remains quite flexible in terms of allowing those types of activities to occur.
And just additional, I've got about 3 quick questions.
Certainly.
So sustainability, I know that was something that came through the shop, and you've got with the rain garden. So just what other considerations have you had around that because I have heard that people could see it as our chance to make sure that as a city we're thinking about these things. So have we got any opportunity for our drinking fountain, recycling bins, if we bring those in, all those sorts of things I can't see on this concept?
Yeah.
Have you thought about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, at a conceptual level, we're dealing with sort of fundamental spatial interventions, and most definitely in the future design stages, those elements will start becoming quite apparent in terms of their specific location within the area. I don't envisage them not being their bins, other things like that. We were just providing street furniture elements like seating and lighting, the fundamental.
The final one is that for a number of years around this council table, and you probably wouldn't be aware, some of us have been concerned about the crashes in Hinamoa Street with that parking in the middle. And we're hoping that perhaps that may either go, or we have a ban and only have small cars or whatever. I see it's still there. Did that come into it at all? You may not be the person to answer that, I'm not sure, but has that been discussed, Portia? Because it's come through quite a few times.
Madam Chair, we have discussed that at length during this first element. What we were looking at doing was just, obviously the next phase is that detailed design with a view that this work would be undertaken in the period sort of April through to August, I think, of next year. So we were going to take the opportunity probably early next year to have that conversation back at this committee about what we do about median parking in that space. That would cause some minor adjustments to the entry at that end, but we very much took the view that this piece of the project was discrete, and it would be a separate conversation that clearly you've signalled you want to have about median parking at some stage. So that was something we were going to do early next year.
Sorry, Councillor Webber. Just to answer your question on sustainability, we kind of missed there. In terms of the use of sustainable materials like wood, absolutely included in the concept. Rain gardens dealing with stormwater and runoff, but also fundamentally in our concept, concept 3, I should say, was the reuse of existing pavers within that area, so the recycling of a lot of the existing pavement within that area as well. So those were our key ideas in and around the reuse. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Sturt.
Yeah, one of the questions I had, I'm really disappointed that the in middle of street parking issue in Hinamoa Street hasn't been addressed in there, because it came through very strongly in the LTP, and also reading some of the submissions that came through as well, although the Public Works specifically requested to comment on those things. But I thought that an interpretation of this intersection with the removal of that mid-street parking in Hinamoa Street, which has been, as Councillor Rank will tell you, has been an ongoing problem in this town for at least 10, 15 years. I thought that this was the opportunity to look at that. The only other thing I'm concerned about, or I need a question about, is the provision of an information kiosk, because the need for information in that area has always been huge. And the third question I have, I'll give them all to you so someone can decide who answers. The third one is, if you take the canopies out in option 2, what provision have you got for canopies where there is performances?
Thank you. Portia, are you?
So there's a couple of images that do show our intent for the incorporation of a digital information kiosk, so an interactive kiosk. Depending on the type of softwares that you use for that, it can be linked to the iSight on Haupapa Street in terms of provision of that information. Where we've located that, we talked earlier about... Sorry, yeah, so I'll get there. So where we talked about earlier were at the key intersections of that kind of north-south pedestrian movement. And so in this image, we can see there's another image I'll show in a minute. So there's a kiosk that's located in here that illustrates that it can be seen really quite clearly from that north-south along to Tanakai. I'll see if I can find it again here at the key. At the key
Electronic,
it looks like an ATM machine, but when it was designed and in place, interactive. Touch-based, yeah, and at that key kind of north-south pedestrian movement in junction with kind of open space. So that is how we're anticipating that the kiosk in terms of a digital kiosk being provided. You'll also see on the right in here a place marker for a canopy, a small canopy associated with the stage for weather protection during events, and that, of course, will be subject to sort of further design discussion in more detailed phases of what that becomes and the level of protection that provides in terms of open space.
The parking. Sure, if that might be. Thank you.
I think that would have given a greater scope for some of the goals that the inner city group have been trying to achieve, is the streetscape and the sight lines. And I mean, if the canopy goes out, you've still got those two big poles in the middle of the sight line. So, I'm just wondering.
We'll see if we can have an answer.
Madam Chair, I think when we went out with the concepts and the conversation happened after we'd put the concepts out, we were limited on, we haven't asked people about the parking on Hinamaya Street. So that's really the issue here. I suppose what I've answered often when previously asked about it was that we could probably take the opportunity to have that conversation early next year before we begin the works, so that if there is a view that we do need to change the Hinamaya Street median parking, it can be incorporated. As I say, it would only be a slight adjustment for that entry in on that side, on the Hinamaya Street entry, so we do have that opportunity, but as I say, we haven't consulted on it and it wasn't part of this project's beef at this stage. But if you'd like us to do that, Stavros is certainly sitting here in the background, so we can certainly take that forward into early next year, so that when we do it, it could be incorporated into a final design for development. As I say, we're proposing to undertake the majority of this work in that period, sort of April through to August. So that would give us enough time to undertake that discussion and certainly incorporate it if that's the will of this committee. I'm just trying to remember what the other question was. The other question about the remaining poles, Councillor, and maybe I just hand this over to Lee, but really there was a view that it was the main anchor ones, the sort of the double width ones, the big concrete ones that actually create the visual obstruction. That these poles could become quite interesting features within the design, so that's probably as much as I should say from a landscaping perspective, and hand over to Lee.
They appear to be more rather than poles, don't they? Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got 5 questions. If it suits you, I'll just deal them one at a time. It might be easier than reeling off 5 questions.
Certainly, thank you.
First of all, the question of demolition taking place before Christmas. As an ex-retailer, the last thing I would ever want is demolition going on outside my door in the 8 busiest trading weeks before Christmas. And I would like to know, has any consultation taken place with those that are likely to be affected and basically have their businesses stopped in the busiest trading period of the year?
Thank you. I suspect that they have been consulted on that. I mean, we've got half the retailers in that area in presence in attendance today. But I mean, if one or two of them would like to make a comment, I'm happy to allow that so that we can be reassured. Thank you.
Thank you, but that would appear to be at odds with the report, which says that the
Next
majority
question, please.
required construction work to be undertaken after Easter. However, I'll move on to the second question. The second question was, I understand that the consultants were given a budget of $500,000. This has now become $1.2 million. How much?
Madam Chair, can I just, in regard to the first question, just on the bottom of page 54, there's a section there headed timing as well. So based on that feedback we received from retailers, and I understand Portia and Councillor Hunt door knocked and spoke to almost everyone in the vicinity, and so you can see there we've identified a stage one, which is prior to Christmas, demolition of the building and the public tender for the detailed design work. So that was our phase one of the project, and the phase two, as we've discussed, is the significant amount of construction work that would take place in that period, Easter to July. I've been saying August, so apologies, Councillor, it's Easter till July. And in regard to the second question about the budgets, Councillor, you're absolutely correct. Part of the brief for the three concepts that was put out to the three design companies was approximately 500,000. So that was the figure they were given as a guide. But as you're aware, clearly we had a preference for concept 3, but what's been incorporated into this refined design is some very strong feedback from the community to basically cherry pick some of the most interesting and innovative features and bring them into that final design. So, Councillor, that's why when we've refined that design and we've taken that community scope, we now have a much more expensive design in place and being proposed. So obviously that's been costed, and you can see there on the bottom of page 55, as I say, this is a costing off a concept, and so we just got in there the plus or minus 15% on the budget. So it's been identified as costing approximately $1 million with those additional features worked into concept 3, and obviously we've taken a view that just to be safe within that stage, which is an estimate on a concept, we are talking at plus 15%. So that's the $1 to $1.2 million for the project at this stage.
My next question is what assessment of the impact on pedestrian counts has taken place concerning the removal of the weather protection provided by the sails, because as an ex-retailer myself, I know full well that pedestrians will not even cross the street if it's raining unless they can do so under cover.
I'm happy to, if one of the retailer group might want to answer that as well.
Madam Chair, the other question related to pedestrian movements. Now, obviously, when Lee presented, he just showed that traffic layout, and the way the traffic layout is being proposed actually strengthens the pedestrian movements in a staying on the same side of the streets. So you'll see the crossover points are being sort of identified, and that's based on, I think, some of that behavioural approaches, but certainly what we had previously presented to you, and Portia made a presentation to you about this, was that tendency for people to cross across city focus. The deflection effect, I think, was how she described it. So what we're actually seeing from what is being proposed in the roading layout is that we'll see a stronger linear movement down through city focus. So that's the expectation.
Thank you.
My next question concerns the U-turns and the traffic flow, and I would like to know what size of vehicle has actually been allowed for and what turning circle. Because I have a ute, it's not even a particularly big ute, but I can't even manage to turn around and hit Mower Street without doing a three-point turn now.
Thank you.
So I can talk to that a wee bit. I mean, effectively, what we're looking at the moment is the retention of the existing loops in their current configuration and in turning circle. In terms, we did do some studies in and around allowing much larger vehicles to move through the space in terms of kind of delivery trucks and otherwise. They have been slightly widened, but if you were to allow for the largest vehicles to move through that space, then you would end up with a vehicular dominated space, because like you're alluding to, the turning curves associated with those are really quite large, like significantly large, and this design has been allowed to accommodate, like you're saying. It surprises me that you can't move around that loop in your ute, because I've seen and we've observed, mid-sized vehicles being able to navigate those turns based on soft observations. So, based on our understanding of that, we made the assumption that the existing loops were functioning quite well to allow a reasonable size of vehicle, but no additional sizing has been allowed for in terms of large trucks going through that central space.
Thank you.
And my final question, you mentioned interactive kiosks. I thought they had to be internal, not external, open to the weather.
Thank you.
I suppose, yeah, I mean, that's a fair point, Councillor Kent. But in terms of its current location in the concept itself, you can see it located, it's in this little area in the corner here outside of Starbucks. There is no reason why that couldn't be located or pushed just slightly under the canopy to provide that weather protection without impacting on its visibility or sight lines from within the plaza area.
Your question? Thank you.
Look, it is just a question, because having someone, with your background, aren't we really talking about the whole of Tūtanakai Street? We're sort of obsessing about this, which is, the refreshing of this. But doesn't the whole use of space change if we move with one of the option that we agree today, and the lakefront become more of a focus? While we're looking at this, everybody thinks all the activities seem to have to stay there, rather than the locus of where you get information might move to where the people are, which is sort of down at Eat Street. And we seem to be forgetting that while we're trying to get everything into this space. What's your view on that? Because the original concept was to open Tūtanakai Street from the lakefront down to Retail South. And aren't we just sort of trying to complicate it by getting everything into this intersection?
I mean, it depends on your view. In terms of the brief that were provided by the stakeholders and otherwise, I think you're quite right in terms of your question. But the provision of open space and green open space in urban environments is actually really important.
I love it.
But I guess what I'm saying is that although not quite mid-span, it's probably 2/3 of the way down. What it does provide is a good destination point with a range of opportunities for activities that may well. The mall is to the south, for example. It may well, people may go and shop there, but they have a better destination, a nice destination that's outside that they will then move through. Yes, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you very much. Well, councillors, as I said when we started this presentation, it is my intention now to put a new recommendation, and that is that point 2, our recommendation 2, remain as stated with option 2 cited there rather than option 1. I'd like to move that. Do I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Wepper. It is now open for discussion.
Sorry, could you clarify that, please?
Yes, I have made a new recommendation, which is recommendation 2, remain as stated, but with option 2. If you see that down there. Yes, remove the sales, that's right. So it's been moved and it's been seconded by Councillor Wepper, thank you, and we're now open for discussion. Thank you, Your Worship.
I'm glad you moved that amended recommendation, because I'm more and more convinced after hearing the views that we're not going to get a dynamic, interactive space unless we remove those sales. And I know and change is really worrying to some, but we need to be, it's a modern dynamic, and I heard someone say this is about the next generation and what they're looking at. And when I went to a meeting, I'll never forget it actually, where you are now, Hilda, there was a meeting before the election, and the community, different people too, came out and they said just something has to be done about this space. It was really a blot on the landscape, and it worked. It's worked so well, and we all loved it when it was first built. But we're just talking about the next generation. And I was a bit ambivalent about the sales, but look, I've walked under there. You don't go under there to shelter from the rain. They were a design feature, really, and I see them as in the way. I like the cleaning and the opening up, the open spaces, the green spaces, the little pocket bits that you've put in here. And I just think what we've heard back from the Inner City Focus Group reflects a view that's even bigger than what I held. I was trying to accommodate that people seem to like the sales and would do it in stages, but I'm more convinced now, if we do it once, and we do it well, and we do it boldly, and we do it innovatively, and we do it so it's got a wow feature. And I heard Ron Finney keep going on about the wow feature, but I agree with him. And I take so many visitors, and at Local Government New Zealand, I went on a walk with Portia, and we walked with mayors. We had about 14. And I asked them, without putting my view forward, what do you think about this space? And they said, it's just got to go. It's just aged, it's dated, and it blocks. It's like a knot in the middle of Tūtanakai Street. Undo the knot, open it out, put the green spaces in, get that mix of pedestrian and traffic. And I think you've come up with, after several phases and reports, you've come up with something that can be shaped a little bit more, but I think it's fantastic. And it reflects the partnership that we've said. A partnership with the community, a partnership with these groups that are working with us. They've come to us in force today, and I know behind them in this room there are many, many, many more. And the street champions have been getting going, and that's an energy that I congratulate you, Karen, for having led, because you've exhausted yourself in this process. I also think those that aren't coping with change need to be uffied, need to be supported, and they understand what we're trying to do here. So I think it's modern, dynamic, but the other bit I love, it's storytelling. What we've got there now doesn't tell a story, but what you've talked about, and I'm glad you showed us and walked us through that 10 minutes today, you talked about our place, our sense of place, and how we can better tell our story. And that's a great intersection. It's a phenomenal thing to have Hinimore and Tūtanakai. And I think for us, with one of our legends, it deserves an iconic space. And I think you've come up with it. I like your recommendation, and I think it's uplifting for us all. And we are looking at an agenda for growth. And if we don't do something, and we're too timid today, we're not going to get that growth. that the rest of the country now is saying something's happening in Rotorua. It's incredibly exciting, and this is going to be symbolic of that agenda for growth. And I hope those councillors that have been worried have had your concerns, allayed a little bit today. But boy, I know that the rest of the country are going to look at this and say, wow, that city, it's not just on the move with all the good stuff you mentioned, Mike. We're putting our money where our mouth is to invest in growth and invest in telling our story, and I think it's incredibly exciting. I'm not worried about this. I'd say bring it on.
Yeah, kia ora. Thank you, Your Worship. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wish to move an amendment to the motion. I wish to move that the words option 2 and point 2 be replaced with option 1, and that we proceed with the basis of the upgrade retaining the cells and pillars, which is what the people of Rotorua have asked us to do.
So I have to put that amendment, don't I?
Yep. Is there any discussion on it?
Yes, is there any discussion on that amendment? So that amendment is that option 1, is that correct? Fine. Option 1 will, is there any sorry, we've got to change it. We'll change it up there. Yes, it's an amendment. It's an amendment. Yes, but mine was up for discussion, but there's been an amendment put now, and we need to put the amendment. And but we can take some discussion on that. Yes, Councillor Sharank.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I speak in support of the amendment, and I'm not afraid of change at all. Over the years, I've seen a lot of change in this city, and have been happy to be part and parcel of driving that change. But I believe that this needs to be done in 2 stages, and I believe that by doing it, by removing the buildings, creating the traffic flow through, it would still give us the opportunity for some activities in that centre with the sails left in and the pillars left in. I don't think the green spaces are actually quite large enough. For instance, if you take the brass band, they're very keen to, now they're back in full flow, they're very keen to do performances down there, but I would doubt whether we would be able to fit 30 players on a piece of that green and have somewhere where the people can stop and actually listen because of the traffic interface. But I'm prepared to go that far anyway, and perhaps take us back to 12 or 15 players. So I'm happy with option 1. I'm comfortable with it. I'm a little concerned for the retailers about the demolition before Christmas, but if they are happy with that, then that's their risk, and we just have to go with what, if they're happy with that, then that's fine. So I'm supportive of option 1.
Councillor Maxwell, Councillor Wepper, then Councillor Sturt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to vote against the amendment because I support the motion with option 2, and the reason being that I thought that we received a positive presentation by Mike Steiner, who's worked very hard in this area with the people, and also Hilda. But the reason is with those positive points that he raised, 13 of them, and every one of them we can relate to, that there's been positive things happening in our city. Thank you, Lee, for the cultural concepts that you explained in there, because I think that's important.
Oh, sorry, Mike.
I spent a day in the ideas store when the figures here show that 309 came, and 90% of the people were in favour of it. And it was quite interesting, and I asked my council colleagues to turn to page 52, where the remaining 10% of respondents indicated they wanted status quo, only 10%, the 90% there. But the important one was that the Rotorua police noted that 1/3 of all crime reported occurs in the intercity, and that the movements that will happen through the city folks will help deter the crime. And the other thing, Madam Chair, is how often do we hear, especially around election time, when candidates all stand up and they're going to do all kinds of things in our inner city. And at the last election in 2013, 31 people, the majority of them were speaking about, we have to do something for Rotorua. And here's an opportunity where we've allowed one of our portfolios, we're going to get all the other portfolios coming to us in the future. And for the first time, which I think I agree with the Mayor, that Karen and her team have done a fantastic job. And here they are, they bring this forward, a chance for us to say, to put our money where our mouths are, a chance to support something that is positive in our inner city, and hence I am strongly supporting what we have here. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Maxwell. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor McVicker, I overlooked you before. How could I do that? I beg your pardon.
Not a problem, Madam Chair, because the subject has changed slightly. But however, I was betwixt and between, I must admit, between option 1 and option 2. I have listened. I have heard the observation of the steering group where they made it very clear that they would like it removed. Another big factor is the sight lines down to Tanakai Street, and by removing the posts, one could achieve that. So I will not support the amendment at this point of time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McVicker. Councillor Wepper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I won't be supporting the amendment. When I came here today, I was very open to the discussion, and so I thank you for all of the presentations, particularly from the landscape architect. I think that this is a cold, wet wind tunnel for most of the year. It's past its use-by date, and I'm not happy about doing a mediocre and half-pie job. I think that really, it just detracts, and I just don't think we'll be very happy with that. We, as a council, agreed after the last elections that the inner city supporting it was our actually number one 2016 priority. And this is actually fulfilling that in the 2016 year. So to me, it's most important that we do it once, we do it right, we have got some flexibility in the long term. I am concerned about performance spaces a bit because I know it has been well used, but I think this will look at other areas around the city that can be used. And I know at Easter, all the churches get together and have a big group, and they love it. But having said that, there could be other spaces, or maybe that could be developed, and maybe that could happen in the future, and I know that we've seen that there. So I think that it's really, really important for us to be brave, to be bold, and just to make this happen. And I'm actually really excited about it, and I really hope we can meet that July date, though JP keeps going to August, and we know that could happen, but I think it's really exciting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wepper. May I just remind members of the public that it is not appropriate, although I can understand why you would want to clap, it is inappropriate, and I would thank you please to refrain as we move through. Thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Over the periods of time, I've been a sceptic in terms of the redevelopment of this particular intersection, but what I see in front of me, I actually support. The only difference between option 1 and option 2 is the removal of the sails. The vehicular movement, the creation of the green spaces, etc., the removal of the kiosk, all those aspects are dealt with, and I'm happy with that because there has been a rigorous and vigorous consultation group. And it's interesting, Councillor Maxwell, that you highlight the 13 items in Mr. Steiner's presentation. You're absolutely right. These are all positive things that have happened without an intersection being altered. And so, I mean, these things have happened anyway. Madam Chair, I would like... Is there a problem? Okay. I'm happy that the sales, the cultural interpretation, the canopy support structures are being enhanced with timber. It falls into line with our Timber First project. So I don't think there's a huge divide between having the sales and not having the sales. My preference is, and the community that I also represent is not only retailers but the wider community. The people have said to me that they want the sales retained because they believe that gives them a sense of security. The issue of the information kiosk, I'm happy with that. That has been explained really well. The only thing I'm really disappointed with is, and I said it earlier and he answered my questions, was I thought this was an opportunity, but JP's assured us that this will happen next year, is to getting rid of that parking in the middle of Hinimoa Street, because that is, you get a bus of tourists, those three-quarter buses, and two Kias in the middle of the street, and people just can't get down there. So I'm happy. I've opened up. I've realised that there is a need to put vehicular. I was opposed to that totally. Vehicular movement right through. I understand your design concepts. I understand what you're trying to interpret. It's just that I will be supporting option 1 because it retains the sales, and I believe that is an aspect of Rotorua that will enhance all the other things this design is trying to incorporate, and it brings it all into one centre. The other thing is some people say, oh, it's going to increase the sightlines. Well, there's a big block on the sightlines to Lake Rotorua anyway, and it's called Eat Street. And the other block is you can't drive like I used to in my A30 Austin, north-south up to Tanakai Street, right across, because Arawa Street, against my best wishes, was blocked off because I used to have a business there, and it's had a huge impact on that business, I can tell you. But I'm happy with everything that's come through. The Inner City Development Group have done a fantastic job. The Ideas Store, those people who didn't want change have had an opportunity to have their say, and it hasn't come through. The vast majority want change. I'm happy with that. All I'm asking my colleagues to consider is I'm supporting option 1, but option 2, if it goes through, has all the other elements that I support except the sales. So I just put that on the table. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sturt. Councillor Donaldson? No. Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I did spend some time, I just want to address some of the issues that were raised in questions, some time in the Idea Store, about 3 sessions in there, and option 4, while it wasn't presented on the concepts that were in front of people as they walked in, every day someone come in and said, where's the option for status quo? And I directed them to look out the window, because there it was right there, and if they were happy for that, write it down on the form. So I don't think that's an issue about, not having that up there as one of the concepts. It was right, they walked right through it to get there. The vehicle loops, I went through one of those vehicle loops in a VW Amarok with a whole bunch of boats on a trailer just yesterday, and with no problem at all. I like the idea of moving them back a bit so that at special times the whole area can be closed off for a major public event. I think that's a fantastic opportunity to have in front of us. I am a little concerned about shade. I'm a bit fussy about my shade, but and I look at the trees that are there. I heard the comment on the television just this morning that the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago, and the second best time is today. Well, let's not settle for second best. I don't want to see any trees that are moved to place them strategically for shade moved with a chainsaw. I'd rather they were relocated if that's at all possible. There's some beautiful totara and titoki in there, so I'd just make that point. But for me, the sale supports, the big wedge ones, are a significant block to sightlines, and I think not moving them is settling for second best. So I won't be supporting the amendment. I would support option 2. And my final challenge is to the steering committee, because I hate the term city focus, is I love the word plaza, and can the steering group please come up with a new name for this place that perhaps relates to its cultural significance as the joining of Hinimore and Tūtanakai, but I would love to see the end of the term city focus. That's me.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Councillor Kent, as the mover of the amendment, you do have the opportunity to be the last speaker. I wish to say something, but before I do, I would like to ask Councillor Hunt. You haven't signalled your intention to speak, Councillor Hunt, but you have led this piece of work for the last couple of years, and I'd like to give you an opportunity, should you so wish, to speak to us this morning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't support the amendment. I think what we've got before us provides an opportunity to reinvigorate a much-loved space, and it lets the sun in. It lets the light into an area that has been overshadowed for the last 25 years. I think the design allows for cover to be flexible. We've already seen cover over the stage areas. We know temporary cover can be put there, and we also know we can have roll-in, roll-out cover with some structural things. This allows us to use the space in a much more dynamic way. Our current format only keeps us boxed into where we've always done things. I mostly want to thank the community at large, and particularly the Inner City Focus Group and the Block Champions and all of those retailers who have given this some serious thought. It is your livelihoods, and you have not just come in with a preconceived idea, and also neither did many people who came into the idea store. They were open to newness, and that really is what this is about. We're moving our city forward. We know it was the prime reason people campaigned on last time. They said, please do something. So we've now got an opportunity at this significant meeting place of Hinimore and Tūtanakai to create again a significant meeting place for our community going forward. And it's not going to look like the one we've had. There will be aspects of it, but it is going to ideally suit us as we go forward. And as time moves on, as Mayor Chadwick said, there will be amendments to that, and I'm delighted to hear that we're going to address the parking issues along Hinimore. And I look forward, so thank you for bringing that up. I think that this is a huge opportunity to breathe new life into the heart of our city, and I look forward to hearing the new name that comes out for our plaza, because that's really the sort of place it will be, and it is for those people who work around that area, as well as the customers who come there, and that's come out strongly. So I support option 2. And I thank everyone, and I particularly like to thank the team led by Portia, who has done an enormous amount of work in this space. And thank you for your design work, Lee, and I look forward to that being detailed. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. And my comments will be brief. Just to say that, of course, this, as Mr. Steiner has said, this is a new and invigorating time. And this option 2 reflects the new and invigorating time. I will be voting against option 1 because that is for the option 1 is for the retention of the sales, and I will be voting against that. I might also say that option 1 is against the recommendation from the working group, who've put so much effort into coming up with something that they believe will be very workable and of great benefit to our city. They are not just the people here today and the other retailers who they represent. They're not just retailers. They are ratepayers in our city. They have their own children. They have spoken to their children who also have children, and to their grandchildren, and they want to see a city that is reflective of going forward and for a bright future for the city. So I will be voting against the amendment. Councillor Kent, as the mover, you have the last say.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not against progress, and in fact I'm probably one of the most progressive councillors around this table. However, reality. This council is already spending far more than it's budgeted for in its long-term plan. We're facing an issue later on this morning on just that topic.
Point of order, Madam Chair.
We have here...
Point of order, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Your Worship.
We had the Office of Audit here just last week that said we are spending within our ability, within our long-term plan. That comment
Excuse me,
has
Madam
to
Chair,
stop
that is
at
not a
this
point
table.
of order.
Thank you. But what I am going to say to you, Councillor Kent, that you can make your points relevant to the discussion today, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. They're totally relevant because we've heard this morning about, oh, it's within our budget, it's within our budget. Hang on, our budget is 85% of what we've budgeted for everything that's in the long-term plan. So it's not 100%, and the figures that you're talking about, it's only 85%. We're looking at two options here. Option 1 and option 2 are identical apart from existing pillars and existing sales. I do not believe for 1 second that the economics of both options are identical, because there will be a cost to demolish the cells and the pillars and God knows what in the way of foundations and everything else underneath that is not incurred with the other option. So we are facing a more expensive option in terms of option 2 over option 1. Secondly, the public have given us a very clear steer. They told us throughout the consultation that they want to see an upgrade of the city focus area. They want to see it modernised. They didn't say they want it totally demolished, which is what you're proposing with option 2. So apart from the economics, I look at the whole scenario and I have some major concerns. My major concern is the design of the whole thing, because I'm seeing four-way traffic crossing in an area which is no bigger than the area of these tables, and pedestrians, and a proposed cycleway, all going through the same area, and now you're thinking you're going to have performances there as well? Come back to reality, councillors. This ain't going to be a performing space. This is going to be an absolute traffic nightmare, unless you're very, very careful. We've already heard that big trucks can't go down there, so the first truck that goes down there accidentally is going to cause a massive traffic jam, and we're going to have huge problems. So I'm saying let's take the cautious way. The cautious way is not quite spend so much money. We'll still do exactly the same layout and see if it works, but it's going to be a lot easier to change if we haven't already taken down the pillars and we haven't done all sorts of other things that we don't need to do straight away if we haven't quite got it right. We're in a situation where we can actually develop this as we prepare it and as we see it laid out on the ground and as we see it in practice. If it's not quite right, we can change it. So I'm saying caution. There is nothing to stop us whatsoever proceeding with option 1 and then saying, oh, hang on, the sightline is a massive problem. We can take it down as a phase 2 if we can afford it. And that doesn't have to be done tomorrow. We can still arrive at the same end result, but we can arrive at it without making silly mistakes, without rushing into it. And personally, in terms of sightlines to Titanic Street, the only sightline affected is someone standing right in the middle of Titanic Street, because that's where the pillar sightline is. If you think about it, it's not in the sightline of anyone on the footpaths, as far as I'm aware, or unless the pillars have suddenly moved. The problem with the city focus is the eyesore of the buildings which have been put up and which are condensing the whole area, causing the wind tunnel, blocking all the sight lines to all the shops. They can go. Step 1. Okay, if the retailers are very happy that they go before Christmas, so be it. It's over to them. It's their decision. If they want to get on with it, fine, let's get on with it. But I'm saying a little bit of caution here, councillors. Let's go with option 1, which is more economical, with the option to move it to option 2 later on, once we've got it right, once we've resolved the fact that the traffic is causing massive chaos in the middle and we've got to change it. Let's get it right and do it once. Not just dive in straight away, spending vastly more than we can afford and have a major traffic problem on our hands.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. I now intend to put the amendment as proposed by Councillor Kent and seconded by Councillor Sturt. All those in favour of that amendment, please say aye. Contrary? No. Division. All those in favour of the amendment, please raise your right hand. Thank you. The amendment is lost. Recommendation 2 there. Do we have any further discussion, please, on recommendation 2? Yes. Oh, I beg your pardon. I'm sorry. Yes, in the division, the names are recorded. Thank you, Councillor Schrank. Sorry, just get
Right. So, councillors, those voting for the amendment were Councillor Bentley, Councillor Kent, Councillor Sarank and Councillor Sturt. Those against, Mayor Chadwick, Councillor Donaldson, Councillor Hunt, Councillor Maxwell, Councillor McVicker, Councillor Rokawa Tate, Councillor Tapsell and Councillor Wepper.
You. Councillor McVicker, you had a question? Point?
Just a brief comment, if I may,
Yes,
before
certainly.
we put the final
Yes.
vote. I believe that we have certainly consulted the community more than adequately. We have got a pretty clear consensus of people have suggested that we need to do it. There's no argument that the CBD in particular is looking great at this point of time and everything's on a roll, and I think we should maintain that and support it. So I'd just like to make the comment that, hey, great to see this proceed. I do have one issue, and that is the expenditure. As has been pointed out already, it's gone from $500,000 to 1.2, and unfortunately we see some projects these days which run over the estimated cost, and it worries me to think that we still need to firm up our price structures. So I just a word of caution on the cost side of the exercise, but hey, go for it. All good.
Thank you very much, Councillor McVicker. I think we're all aware that last week we were given a very clear steer by the auditor that should anything change, we're just going to have to make some adjustments to some of our projects. Any further discussion on the substantive motive, Councillor?
Madam Chair,
Thank you.
I will vote in favour of option 2 now that option 2 is lost. Option 1 is lost. Option 2 is now on the table. I will support that because the only difference that I saw between the two options was the retention of the sales. The other design concepts are vibrant, are fantastic, as Councillor Hunt has put forward, and the community have said, yes, we want change. So I don't want people going off on a tangent and saying, because you voted against it, the only thing I was voting for was the retention of the sales, and I want that made quite clear out in the community. The rest of it, the parking, and all the other concepts, the work that you've done and led, Karen, has been absolutely fantastic, and our CBD is vibrant now, and this will enhance it even further. So I congratulate you and the Working Party on that. My brief was I just wanted the sales retained, and that's why I voted accordingly. But congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Councillor Tapsell, Councillor Tapsell and Councillor Schrank.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I suppose just to add to the discussion that we've already had, and I do have to be quite honest, I have sort of struggled with this situation in terms of the costs that we're going to have, and I do respect Councillor Kent's caution on us all, and also Councillor McVicker's just slight hesitation on let's make sure that it stays within budget, I guess is what I'm trying to say. In the past, that city focus was where the inner city was. It was a vibrant, thriving Tūtanikai Street. At present, it's not. In respect, I must say, I have been very disappointed at some of the discussion that I hear calling people riff-raff, and in other workshops and they've been called Muppets. I think this new phase we're going to go into, we should be very respectful, and it should be an inclusive area for anyone of any age, race or social status. So I do want to say that out of respect, because these are our people of our city, all of them. So let's keep that an inclusive area. Moving into the future, we cannot undo what is done. We have had a bit of a mess there, but I guess the only time we should look back is to see how far we've come, and I am proud of how far we have come as a council to reach the stage where we're discussing this, to have people in the audience here that have worked very strongly alongside staff and Councillor Hunt, and I do want to congratulate you all on that, because you do only get out of life what you have the courage to ask for, so congratulations on having the courage and commitment to get this to the table before us right now. I did have my hesitations on the cost, and also on people from the community not quite understanding the full impact of what this will be, but I am happy with the discussion that we've had and the fact that it is within our budget. I think that's what people are perceiving to be wrong with the costs and where the fare is, but it is actually within our budget and it will be okay. So I am in support of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Tapsell. And thank you for raising the cost, and it has been brought up by other councillors, but not one councillor has the monopoly on concern for finances. Every councillor that sits at this table has concern for our finances. And certainly recently we've been grappling with that, and we've had the Auditor General, and we've certainly had our CEO and our Chief Operating Officer, and everybody is really serious about our finances. So it doesn't just sit with one councillor. That concern sits with all of us. Councillor Wepper, then Councillor Shirang.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to just add a little more to this discussion. We were concentrating on the amendment previously. So just to go back, all reports have recommended over a number of years of strengthening the spine and improving sightlines. And currently, if you're a visitor to the city, you don't always know where our main street is. And I think a lot of cities have main streets. And actually around the country, we're not the only ones that are improving our city and want to make it vibrant. A lot of places are doing that. So I think we've got to keep on the roll that we already are. And I won't go on. I think everyone's congratulated the steering group and Councillor Hunt quite a few times, and I think that's appropriate. As far as the finances are concerned, the decision in the long-term plan that we made was actually that we would live within our capital spend. We would see it as a funding envelope of 85%. So that gives us the opportunity to say, well, this may cost a little bit more than what we anticipate, but maybe we might not do something else to the same extent. So we've got that ability to do that, and I think that's very important for us to understand, because I don't want someone coming back, and if this comes in slightly more, because we do have to have the detailed costs come to us. We're hearing today that it might be 1 to 1.2, but the reality is when you get into all that, the design detail, that's where it could change a little bit, and we need to understand that in a pragmatic way. But for me, this is an incredibly important project, and while I don't want it to go over too much, reality is that, you know, we just have to be aware of that and see how that works. The other thing is, and I agree with Councillor Tapsell, I have felt disappointed over the years. We know we have had people that perhaps don't behave well in our city, but the City Safe Guardians have helped, and also creating a nice environment with SIPDED principles actually encourages much better behaviour. And I think if we want our young people to be excited about our city, to not spend their time shopping online, but say, hey, this is my space, this is where I'm comfortable, I know I'm welcome there, that is really important for us to actually get a range of people mixing there, and I think we'll find better behaviour actually occurs. So I think we're on the right track, and I really appreciate all of the councillors' vision and wanting to make this an exciting space. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Shirang, then Councillor Maxwell.
I shall be brief, Madam Chair. I just want to query the costings on page 55. And do the figures, there are 4 lines there, does that actually include the removal of the sails and the poles? It does say additional elements, but I'm not sure what that means. It is talking about option 1, which was the retaining of the sails and the poles, so I'm guessing we have to add on the demolition of those.
JP. I think I might ask you, JP, before. Thank you. This is our finances.
Madam Chair, one of the discussions we had was how we do the costing discussions in this space, and I've heard a councillor say one of the issues was that if you remove the sail, which is a reasonably simple task of removing it, it's got shackles that hold it onto the various pillars. There was the comment about it will cost a significant amount to remove the pillars and also the superstructure that sits underneath that. And we've had some discussions in the past about how much money was spent actually creating that superstructure underground. So when we looked at these figures, we felt there was enough flexibility in there, because certainly the intention was not to remove the superstructure underground. So the opportunity there was to say, look, we've got enough flexibility within these numbers to actually just, and I'll be very simplistic, saw the pillars off at ground level so that we can just treat it at that level, so not actually go down to completely removing the superstructure underneath. So we saw it as being a reasonably minimal cost to remove those pillars and the sail. So though it's not directly included in here, we thought with the contingencies that had been provided around option 1, there was sufficient funding to undertake that work, because at this stage the view was that we would not get to the superstructure underground. Madam Chair, it was taken that the contingencies that we had within this option, which was sufficient to remove it. So it is accepted that it could be accommodated within this budget.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. Just briefly, there was a good suggestion about a name change, so I've urged Karen and Mike and the team to work on it as soon as. I thought Plaza was good, I like it, so hurry up and change it before I call it a Marai or something.
Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a query with regard to the amount of consultation we undertake and the advice received from experts with regard to the demolition of the city focus. Have we sought the advice of engineers for that purpose?
Yes, so to understand the cost estimates, we have gone to our preferred supplier to seek their advice on the demolition of that building. So if you decide today to remove the sail and pillars also, that should be fairly easy within that building.
Thank you. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've expressed my views, so I'll be relatively brief. We have a budget for refurbishment of the CBD of 1.3 million a year times 85% is 1.1 million per year for each of the next 3 years. Effectively, with what you're proposing here, we've blown the first 2 years, plus whatever we've already spent. Now, if the councillors around this table agree that that is the answer, I'm quite happy with the fact that option 1 has been defeated and will not stand in the way of option 2. However, I caution councillors that from here on in, we're on a shoestring and we will be watching dollars very definitely.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. As I said before, it is the concern of all councillors, our mayor and all councillors, as to the financial situation of this council right now and also going forward. I now propose to put motions 2 and 3. Motion 2, that the committee recommend to council to refresh city focus as per the refined concept design, staging and budget as described in the report, option 2. Recommendation 3, that the committee recommend to council amendments to the inner city revitalisation strategy to reflect the decision made in point 2. It has been moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Wepper. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? I don't think so. Division? Division? I think, yes. Recorded against is Councillor Bentley. Or a division then? It's called, not necessary to have a division. There was only one. What do you want?
Well, Councillor Maxwell can actually call for.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, yes, you do have the right to call for a division. Councillor Maxwell. All those in favour, please say aye. I beg your pardon. Please raise your right hand. Thank you. And against, thank you. Please raise, Councillor Bentley. Thank you very much. So that's been quite a mammoth effort this morning, Your Worship and Mayor. Can I just please thank the retailers this morning who've taken time out of your busy day, busy morning, to attend this morning. It has been very enlightening, certainly to have your comments earlier in the presentation. We do have, I might add, we do have 2 other items this morning that you might be interested in to stay for. That's the final inner city parking plan, and the second one is the extension of the night market. I'm not sure how you're placed, but I am going to suggest that we take a 5-minute recess. But Your Worship?
I just want to make a comment, because he's in the room. We should congratulate Daryl Church for his national award at the award on Saturday.
Thank you. Yes, yes.
Whether it needs a motion, but certainly I'd like to move, if I need to, I'll move that Mr. Steiner's report as read out to the committee this morning be included in our in the historic situation with the minutes.
Thank you. Yes, we will. Thank you.
And we should have both reports.
And both reports, yes. Thank you.
Meetings from 1:30 on, and I just wonder if we can
We'd like to get a
continue.
cup of tea and come straight
Yeah,
back?
yes,
All right,
fine.
rather than take a recess.
Yeah.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So we'll just get a quick cup of tea and come straight back. Thank you. Okay, all right. Okay this morning? Thank you, councillors. Thank you, councillors. Can we resume our seats, please? what I'd like to attempt to do is to try to get through everything before lunchtime, before going into the public excluded, which is probably going to take place after lunch. But if we can get through everything on our general agenda prior to lunch, that would be excellent. And I do understand and appreciate that some councillors have other business that they have to attend to. So our recommendation 2, the final inner city parking plan. May I have a mover and a seconder, please, that the plan be received? Thank you, Councillor Wepper. Thank you, Councillor McVicker. Oh, hello, we haven't. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Thank you. That was moved by Councillor McVicker, Councillor Wepper, and by second by Councillor McVicker. Thank you. Is it Portia to again? Yes, and Stavros. Yes, good morning. So I'll leave it up to you to do the introduce the presentation.
The next item on the agenda is the parking. So you'll remember the inner city parking came about in December of 2013 at the request of the retailers, where council agreed to a free parking trial program as part of revitalising our inner city. And that was agreed to 2 free hours, and that was along Tutanekai Street, on Pukuatua, Uruwera, and Hinamoa as well. And that was in operation for 11 months. Back in September of 2014, the Inner City Focus Group got together again and came into council and asked to change the P120 down to 60 minutes on Tutanekai Street and 90 minutes on the spine. So there's the 2 trials that we've gone through already. So December 2013, which was the P120, and then the changes that happened to drop it down to 60 minutes and 90 minutes. And of course, the Inner City Focus Group was of the understanding that the parking is generally, the average stay is under 60 minutes anyway. It's between 35 and 45 minutes, and trying to ensure that we get that turnover as well. So again, in July of 2015, the Block Champions came together. That was when the Block Champions were initiated, and this was one of their first projects that they were given. They walked all of their blocks to understand what their blocks' needs were in terms of the parking, and they came together and in a workshop determined what changes were needed to make the parking more effective. They came up with this concept here, which is dropping the free parking of the 90 minutes down to 60 minutes, but also pulling that in a little bit because and allowing for $1 an hour on the outskirts as well. So now there were a couple of issues that the Block Champions were bringing to the table that they were dealing with. One of them is that we've got other uses within the city that require longer than 60 minutes. So those are uses like the hairdressers, the basement cinema, the wall, and other services that require people to stay longer than 60 minutes. So at the moment you'll see ladies in foils leaving hairdressers to go and move their cars, which is highly inappropriate. And also some of the hairdressers' staff are moving customers' cars as well, which is a liability issue. So what they'd like to do is offer a variety of parking. So here's the area which is free, which is close to the spine, but also not far, 100 metres down the road, you will have the opportunity to stay for longer if you pay $1 an hour for a maximum of 3 hours. So you can't stay for 8 hours, but you can stay for a maximum of 3 hours to encourage that turnover. The other recommendation is that they'd like to push that up into Haupapa Street and Aroa Street as well. and also bring that $1 an hour down all the way to Ranulph Street. The other recommendation that we went out for consultation on was dropping the car parking building down to $2 per day as well, to encourage people to get into that parking building and to discourage the workers from misusing the parking on the street. So we went out for consultation on this. It was in the Ideas store for the first week and then also available online and in our customer centre and in the library as well. And so this is the feedback we got. We got 195 people give some feedback. 65% agreed with the $1 an hour paid parking. 60% agreed to the 3 hours maximum time limits. 73% disagreed with the 60 minutes, and they were actually recommending keeping it at 90 minutes. 83% agreed that there should be free parking up on Haupapara in Aroa Street as well. And 78% agreed that the cost of the parking building should be reduced. So these are the options that you have for you today. What the Block Champions did was they reviewed all of the feedback received, and the feedback, of course, is saying instead of 60 minutes to keep it at 90 minutes instead. And the Block Champions have said that they'd prefer to see the 60 minutes remain because they would like to see the turnover. In their opinion, what they've seen since we changed it to 60 minutes on the spine is a much better use of the car parking. There's a much better turnover, and they're seeing that their customers are enjoying the 60 minutes because they can actually pull into Tūtanakai Street and get a park. Most people can get a park on Tūtanakai. But of course the consultation is saying the 90 minutes instead of the 60 minutes. If people are given the option of, do you want less minutes over more minutes? If people are given the option of 60 minutes instead of 90 minutes, of course, people are going to choose the more amount. And it's the same with the car parking building. If people are given the option of, would you like to pay $4 or $2 per day? Of course, the majority of the people are going to say, yes, we would like to pay less. In terms of the parking building, it's officers' understanding that the parking building is 50% empty on most days. And the reason for this is that the majority of people are finding parking on the street. It's available for them. On their way to the parking building, they are finding a car park, so it's easier for them to park. If we extend the $1 per hour for a maximum of 3 hours into those blocks between Amahia and Ranulph Street, there is a chance that there will be a behaviour change where a lot of those people that are parking in there will come into the parking building instead. And also the other issue with reducing the cost on the parking building is that there will be a loss of $50,000 per annum in revenue. So what we're recommending in option 1 is to, as per the public consultation, we've got the 90 minutes there, as per their recommendation, but leaving the car parking building for another 6 months to understand what the behaviour change will do and come back and address that should the parking building not increase in the amount of people using it. But of course you've also got the other option to consider today, which is the Block Champions view, which is keeping it at 60 minutes instead. So I'm open for questions, points of clarification.
Yes, thank you. Just a moment, please. Yes, Jeff.
Councillors, if I can just make a couple of observations, and I think Portia has made a very good comment here. And so the recommendation that has been made in the report, obviously, is in alignment with the public consultation that has been undertaken. The problem that we've got here is, as Portia said, if you say to people, would you like less or more, the likelihood of them responding for anything other than more is extremely remote. Now that, of course, then raises the validity of the the consultation that's been undertaken, and how much of a steer can you really actually take from that. I think it would be worthwhile from hearing a little bit from Stavros is from a technical parking point of view. What would actually be technically a more feasible or best option, and from a roading perspective, is the advice from staff in alignment with the block champions from a technical point of view. I think those matters really you need to weigh up with respect to the decision making here, because clearly in this particular case, the public consultation is actually somewhat fraught.
Thank you. I'm happy to take fraught. Fraught. Happy to take a comment or two, Stavros, from you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple of notes. I would suggest from them to put into the context of starting with about the purpose of the car parking in the inner city. And we have always said that parking is there to serve the needs of our economic activity in the city. And therefore, our consultation with the block champions clearly indicated that 60 minutes was a preferable option. To back that up, the review opportunity identified through our data monitoring that over 85% of the users stay on the car parking for less than 60 minutes. There is an argument that people go to hairdressers or cinemas would like some longer time. However, that seems to be a little bit sort of counterintuitive in that people go to hairdresser, they will stay for at least 3 hours, and therefore 90 minutes will still not going to be available enough for them. Or to the movies, 2 hours will still not going to be available enough for them too. The other thing too is that if we go to the 90 minutes, basically what we do, we remove approximately 15% of the parking capacity in the city in terms of the availability of them for people, because only 15% of the people stay for longer than 60 minutes. And therefore, if you make all your parking at 90 minutes, you just, you remove your turnover capacity by about 15%. So our recommendation from a technical operational perspective is to stay to the simple 60-minute time limit, and that will be consistent with the utilization and be consistent with the advice of the inner city block champions too. Thank you.
Thank you. No. Recommending parking 60.
Just said, from a technical point of view, sticking with the P60 was the way to go.
But it's 90
but the
here.
recommendation 01 says 90.
That is right. Yeah.
So Stavros is supporting the block champions' view of option 2. Good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson, then Councillor Kent.
Is it just questions or?
Yes, it's just questions at this point.
So, does this do away with all the 15-minute segments that we've got at this stage, Portia?
No, so the 15 minutes still remain, and the disability spaces still remain as well.
Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to know if any consideration has been given. One of the things that concerns me if I go into the CBD to park is I'm driving down the street and I'm trying to find a free parking, and all of a sudden it's meter parking, and all of a sudden it's 15-minute parking, and it's total utter confusion as far as I'm concerned, because when I actually pull into one that even is a meter, it doesn't even tell me on it what time of day the meterage actually starts from. So from a perspective of someone coming in from outside, we are creating confusion. I would like to suggest something, and I would like to know whether it's practical, and that would be that the whole of Tutanikai Street was 60-minute free parking only. That the splines running from Fenton to Amahia were all first 60-minute free, but you could put in $2 and stay for 3 hours, because your first 60 minutes was free, the remaining 2 you paid for. That would enable people going to the hairdressers immediately, anywhere on those side streets, or going to the cinemas immediately, to put $2 in the slot and know they're comfortable for 3 hours. It caters for the people who are only going to park for less than an hour anyway, and it gives consistency and a very simple solution to what I think you're trying to achieve. So is it practical?
Stavros, you might want to comment. It's something that's just come out on the table this morning, being presented this morning.
Well, I think that I think it's quite important to go. What Councillor Kent suggested, it's implementable. However, we worked with in a city sector, and we arrived at these proposals. And as I said, we are driven by the input we get from the business sector as to what's appropriate, to suit their business requirements. Another factor that I forgot to mention earlier is that the time limit we propose at the moment, the 60 minutes and the $1 for maximum 3 hours, are also aimed as a discouragement for employees, of using, and hogging the car parking space, for long periods of time. So, although Councillor Ken's recommendation, like any other recommendation, is implementable, that was, has been discussed and has not been in favour, of the inner city sector.
Yes, JP.
Madam Chair, just picking up on another point that was raised by Councillor Kent, which Stavros didn't answer off, is about the confusion. But clearly we've had 2 years of a trial and changed trials without removing any of our current infrastructure. So I think that's probably created the confusion during those 2 years. So if we're taking a decision on this is the framework moving forward, then we can make sure that the level of infrastructure reflects actually what you're entitled to do. So that confusion about getting out of your car and seeing a lollipop with a sign on it telling you can stay a variety of minutes will disappear once we've determined what the final position is. We'll be able to sort of then arrange the infrastructure appropriately.
Thank you, Your Worship.
A question, I think I got you, that option 2 seems to be coming through quite strongly. And does that incentivise the public to move to the parking building? Because that's really what I'd like to see. We are so used to the richness of parking outside, but really it's not far to walk from anywhere, and we need to be encouraging more use there. I like the reduction. I think that's great. And you've got good support for that, but we also need to sort of incentivise people that is there. It just might mean you have to walk a block.
So also the block champions were raising the matter that we don't market our car parking building enough, or we don't publicise that it's there enough. So we need to do, and they've come up with a few initiatives to encourage people to use that as well, the workers, to bring them in.
Great.
So there'll be a lot more of that as well.
Great.
Yes,
and the answer that option 2 covers that right incentive flow?
Yes, that's right. So at the moment, the blocks between Ranulph Street and Amahia Street, people can stay for up to 8 hours and not have to leave. So a lot of the workers park in there at the moment, but we also have, the movie theatre in there, and we have a lot of businesses in there as well, which would benefit from their customers being able to come and visit them. So that will encourage a lot of people into that car parking building.
Councillor Sturt.
I'm glad you just mentioned the latter, because that is an incredible problem outside our business, that people can just keep moving their vehicles and park there for 8 hours for $3. And that's crazy when you've got a picture theatre right across the road. You've got a tyre place, that people leave their cars and leave their tyres, they've got a queue, etc. I'm actually quite happy, Madam Chair, if you want to take a motion to move option 2. I've spoken to a number of these champions. They have done a fantastic job in talking to every retailer in each block and coming up with a solution that will stop that 8-hour gang-busting, people parking outside other people's businesses. We got 3 different businesses who are inside the 60 who've been parking outside our business because it's 8 hours. And that's fundamentally incorrect.
Councillor
that-
Stewart, are you proposing P60 then up there, under 2?
Yes.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
That's oh, it's gone. Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
For a maximum of 3 hours. Yeah, and the rest of it as well.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. Is there any
Yep.
further? Yes, Councillor McVicker, then Councillor Wepper.
Thank you, Madam Chair. One question, if I may address you, Portia, is Whakawe Street, where I see 2 of the operators have registered their concern, and it's not included in this update. Where are we with Whakawe Street parking?
Yes, so at this point, Whakawe Street wasn't included in the consultation or as part of the concerns of the block champions. There are a number of bays down there that do not have parking meters, and so we would like to consider as part of it to encourage those parking meters into there as well to get that turnover. But similar to what the other areas of Whakawe Street and that end of Tūtanakai Street have as well.
Wepper?
Yeah, it's time to have our say now and not ask questions. Is
Yes,
that
I think
right?
it's please do.
Thank you. I'm not going to support motion 2 with the P60. I'm in favour of the P90 and I'd like to explain why. I think it makes a mockery of public consultation if we ignore the number of people that have actually supported the P90. The parking is funded from general rates, and we have spent the last few years encouraging people back into town. We have got a perception that people are welcome now, and were asked from the retailers a couple of years ago when we went to this to be equal a bit more with the Central Mall. So that's where we came from. We also came from a point of where we'd put some pay and display machines in and people had got $40 tickets, and it caused a huge uproar, and we had parking spaces that weren't used on Tūtanakai Street. And this is what started this. Our public are very sensitive, they're very easily put off, and they'll say, I'm just going to Central Mall. I have heard not only from the statistics that you produced, but also anecdotally, that people like the P90. They like the P90 because it's not just about hair. They can get their nails done, they can go and have a cup of coffee, they can look at other shops that sometimes a P60 doesn't allow. You've already proved here that most people will only park the 35 to 40 minutes, so there is the turnover, in my opinion. So that's where I'm coming from. It's the perception of freedom and welcoming, and this is a lovely space. I do agree, and wanting ownership, I do agree that I'm quite happy to go with the $1 per hour for the other areas with a limit of 3 hours. I think that's sensible and does require flexibility. But my point is more around the P90, where I really strongly support the people in our community, our locals, who say, oh yeah, it's a good place to go back to town now. And that is why I'm actually very strong about that, and I can't support the P60 just purely because of that. I have talked to Stavros, and I understand that we will be keeping our lollipops there. Not that they're attractive, but just because people don't want that fine. They don't want the $40 fine. And I think that's a sensible way, because it's taken us a long time to get people back into wanting to come to town, and I think the parking has had quite a bit to do with it. I appreciate the work the Block Champions have done, but reading through some of these submissions, and I did take the time to read, I do see that there are people further down the block where people will have to pay $1 a metre, are a little bit worried about people won't easily go and park there. Their car spaces could be left empty. Hopefully that will change over time. And I also take on another point raised from the Block Champions that employees will park outside each other's shops. But maybe we could encourage the inner city group and the Block Champions to try and get people together to say, this isn't good acceptable behaviour. We actually want to leave it, and maybe the energies could be better channelled into doing something like that. So I feel very strongly, because I think that we are flying in the face of serious public consultation that have said we would like this, and I don't really accept that we just think that they'll want the larger amount. I think there's a number of good reasons why people have supported the P90. They've thought about it. They've realised now that I can go to town and do a few things and just park in one space. So that's where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Councillor Whipper. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I just ask for clarification first? We're talking P60 and that's it, period. You're not allowed to park more than the 60 minutes. You can't put your money in and pay longer. What are we trying to do, scare people out of the CBD? Seriously, this is chasing people away from the CBD. If you want to go and have a cup of coffee and visit 2 shops, it takes more than an hour, particularly if you're with a lady. Seriously, if you're going to go into 2 boutiques and have a cup of coffee, it takes more than an hour. So I'm not going to park anywhere in that central. I'm going to go to Central Mall because I can walk the length of the town over a couple of hours, have a cup of coffee and actually do what I want to do, which is we'll go shopping in the CBD. So aren't we cutting off our nose to spite our face? I think seriously, we've got this wrong.
Stavros, thank you.
I don't think the council is trying to scare people off, the CBD. I think just in statistical terms, we own and operate about 3,500 car parks on the street in the CBD. The P60 will apply to roughly about 1/3 of them. The other 2/3, people can stay up to 3 hours or the full day if they want to. So basically, we're reserving about 1/3 of our on-street parking stock to high turnover, short duration, our stays. The other 2/3 could be spread out between 3 hours and full day anyway. So it's just a matter of providing the right mix, for all kind of users. And we think that, this kind of ratio suits most of the circumstances of people that we know anyway.
Thank you. Yes, Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm in agreement with Councillor Whipper with regard to the 60-minute business, but I'm also wondering to incentivise the use of the car park building, if we could approach the businesses within the CBD and offer them your $2 a day parking for their employees, and I don't know, give them a coupon, something like that, which may get the longer term parking sold.
It's certainly something that that the business owners might want to consider, actually. That's a very good point. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've really struggled with this one myself. I've got some sympathy for where Councillor Whipper and Kent are coming from, because it's about a stress-free experience when you go to town, and knowing that meter is counting down is an issue that's in the back of your mind when you're trying to enjoy the experience. But I understand the need for turnover, and I note that we are providing more free parking in Haupapa Street and Arawa Street with this proposal. And then I sort of think about the issues of consistency. So 60 minutes is inconsistent with Central Mall, as been pointed out, but it is consistent with our airport car park. So you get a free 60 minutes there as well. And the other point I guess, and it was only mentioned to me by Portia when I was talking one day about the idea of a Rotorua City app, is that we actually have an app that's I've now put on my phone called Smart App or Smart App. But you can look at it before you go into the inner city, and it'll tell you every car park that's covered by a sensor, whether it's free and how much time it is before it becomes free. So you can look at that, you can plan, you can have a look at the car park you're in, and you know where you're going. So I think sometimes, we've got to look at the opportunities, the digital opportunities around understanding the issue. And so weighing it all up, I would support the motion. I'd support the 60 minutes. I think it's a tricky one. What I would like to see is, if this goes through, whichever way we go, 60 or 90, is that the meters in the free parking space are removed as quickly as possible to clean up that streetscape.
Thank you. Councillor Kent.
Thank you. I'm not comfortable we've got the right solution at all, and I certainly can't support a P60 option because I think basically we're actually chasing people out of the CBD, and we're trying to actually get them to come to the CBD, and anything that discourages them is putting them off coming to the CBD, and we've got enough empty shops already. Seriously, I can't support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt?
Thank you. I can see the benefits of both, and I've certainly taken note of the feedback that's come through, but also recognised our habits of wanting more and less, and we want more and we want to pay less for it. I think the biggest things for me are turnover. And when we look at the map that came through, and Hope Up is a great example there, we've got Knox and Gravers, they need the turnover, then it's a drop and run. There are lots of places, the sushi place in Tutanakai Street where people want to park and pick up lunch. There are a number of places where people simply want to be there for the 35 to 45 minutes that we know they spend there. And it is not very far to walk from a paid meter, should you choose to spend a bit more time to have lunch and to do some shopping with that. Most people generally know and know what they're going out there for, and if they change their mind, then they have the option of going and moving their car. $1 an hour for 3 hours provides anyone, and it is about 100 metres to the spine. So I believe that this proposal that came through the businesses in there allows for that flexibility. The other wonderful thing with parking is that we have been able to meet the needs of changing businesses. Now we know that there is a turnover, and we know with the post office moving to Pukawatawa Street that we actually required more P15s. So we could respond to that. It's dynamic. Now I'm not saying we change our parking every 5 minutes, but I am saying that this gives an opportunity to analyse any pinch points we have going forward, and if there are areas, and I'm glad to see Whakawe Street will come into that, then that allows us to look at those areas as they come forward. So I am going to support the P60 because I believe that on balance it actually recognises what actually happens, which is the turnover, recognises the businesses and that need for availability outside their premises, and I believe the $1 an hour provides a very reasonable alternative. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Hunt, if there are no further speakers, Councillor Stewart, you have the last word on this one, as the mover. Oh, yes. Thank you. I will put that motion right now. Thank you. Motions 2, 3 and 4. I will read them out. That the committee recommend to council to change the proposed free parking areas to a mix of parking 60 minutes and $1 per hour bays for a maximum of 3 hours, and extend this area into Haupapa and Arawa streets and finish the trial. Right. 3, that the committee recommend to council amendments to the inner city revitalisation strategy to reflect the decision made in item 2, and 4, that the committee recommend to council to amend the policy and guidelines for performance-based parking management practices to reflect the decisions made in item 2. It's been moved by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Sharank. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Thank you very much. Oh, sorry? Yes. There were 3 that were recorded against. Councillor Wepper, Councillor Kent and Councillor Bentley. Thank you. Right, thank you. The recommendation 3, the extension of the night market. That's you again, Portia, is that correct?
Yes, Bridget Nelson's going to present this report
Oh,
to you.
thank you. Good morning, Bridget, and welcome. Good morning. Oh, thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Donaldson, seconded by Her Worship the Mayor. That the report extension of the night market be received. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Morning. I'm here today to talk to you regarding the extension of the Rotorua night market. For most of you, you'll be aware that the market started over 5 years ago and really has run successfully every week, every Thursday, for over 5 years. Currently on the night market evenings, the two nearest ATMs, those being at Kiwi Bank and the ASB, have an average withdrawal of over $75,000 each. The majority of this take goes straight back to local retailers and those in the market stalls. Numerous small businesses have started from the platform of the night market, some of which have gone on to become very successful, employing staff locally and making a contribution to local economy. For an example, the Giabata Bakery is a prime example. They started at the night market and now have a very successful business on White Street. There's arts and craft businesses that have started from stalls that now have retail premises, and so on and so forth. Another being a Cornish pasty company that now distributes to large supermarket chains. These all started at the Rotorua night market. During this time, it's been noted that families do tend to stay not as long as they could, because there is nowhere really comfortable and appealing to sit and linger and to eat as a family. It is proposed that a family-friendly extension to the market be implemented during the summer period, with initial implementation beginning from December 2015 and to be reviewed in April 2016. The benefits of extending the market. The local and visiting families can stay and enjoy their experience at the night market. There are more opportunities for new businesses to join the market. There's an increased value proposition for nearby properties. There's the continuing of the strengthening of the spine as per the inner city revitalisation strategy, and also to increase the service level of the night market and to make it new and exciting. As we were sort of leaders in markets in the evening, it is time that we sort of showed a new aspect of it, and the shared space activity zone may well be the point of difference. We have three options here. We have the option one, which is to do nothing. That would require no additional resourcing or budgeting, but we would really never entice our families back to the city, and it's a lost opportunity for stallholders and retailers in the spine of Tutanekai Street. Option two is to do the same but bigger, with more stalls, spreading the profits of those existing stallholders, many who have been there for 5 years through summer and winter, and that may indeed drop the quality of the market. Option three is to be bigger, but more orientated towards families. An initial capital investment would be required and a cost-neutral operation spend. This would in turn give us happy families, increase the spend, and meet the expectations. And this would be the recommendation that I would have from our and it is from our community. I think the image on the screen is really a conceptual drawing, but the feedback that we've had from our community via the Daily Post, Facebook, a study through the Wairiki students, is that we really need somewhere to stop and stay. It needs a festival atmosphere. It needs to be interactive. Mums and dads can come down and put their children into a sort of space that is secure and comfortable, and they can be performing some sort of activity through arts or craft. The engagement to discuss with the night market family. We've had a lot of engagement with not only the retailers, through Facebook, through other activities, retailers and the community, and it is understood that that's what our community feels. The feedback is that we need to cater for families, we need containment for them to stay, and thus in turn will increase visitation and increase the spend per shopper. Our budget initially is a spend of $50,000. This would include infrastructure, including tents, fencing, floor coverings, lights, power and storage. In speaking with some of our accountants this morning, since I wrote this report, we actually have currently approximately 20,000 K in reserve, and approximately Therefore, approximately 30,000 would be required to extend the area with budget. And this, of course, can come out of the inner city revitalisation budget. Should you approve this today, I am also in a position to approach our key sponsors for support to reduce this capex. In the operational budget, we would need to be spending additional money for the cost of the setup with our crew, and maybe some additional income from stallholders may offset that cost. We would be hoping that this would be anticipated to be cost neutral. So I hope that sort of covers what we're looking at. And are there any questions?
Yes, thank you, Bridget. After 5 years, it's good to, I think it's probably high time that we looked at it. Questions, please, for Bridget. Councillor Kent, then Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got two questions. First of all, how much do those ATMs take on non-night markets? Nights. How much do those ATMs take on normal nights, non-night market? Because you can't attribute the whole taking of the ATM to the night markets. You can only attribute any increase over other nights.
That's a fair question. If you wouldn't mind, I'll go back and do some research and come back and answer that question for you.
Okay, and my second question is, how many of the stallholders are actually from Rotorua? Because the last time I did a survey around Curau Park, I found one Rotorua stallholder. Everyone else was from outside of the district.
No, you can't compare the two markets. They're quite different. I would say 60 to 70% of our market stallholders would be locally based.
Councillor Bentley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Bridget, for your presentation.
Thank you.
And I congratulate you on extending it through to the now to be demolished city focus. Is any consideration being given to encourage the use of this spine of the city to negotiate with the people that down at Curau Park on the Saturday morning to use it for a similar sort of facility, and also to take a leaf out of Cambridge's books, where they have a monthly Trash and Treasure Day in their central business district, which is highly successful.
Only in the last couple of days we've been having conversations about discussing how we can work together with the people at Curau Park. So it would be something that we can look at too and come back to you about. There is opportunity, I would imagine, to do something, yes.
Bridget, I have a question for you, because I do go, obviously, to Quito Park and to the night market. Not very often to the night market because I can't sit down anywhere, so I just buy and go. But do you not believe that there are two clear, distinctive audiences? One for Quito Park and the other one for the night market, because when I look there certainly are. So I just want to get a sense from you if you believe that is the case.
Yes, I do agree that that's the case. They are completely separate markets, because one is obviously in the morning and people are clearly going there to buy their product for their households, where the night market is that, as well as buying artisan products for their pantry. It's a social experience of our two cultures, or our culture and our visitors coming together as a social meeting place.
Thank you, Your Worship, and then Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Bridget, for this report. And I think it's marvellous, but we're not speaking on it yet. But my question is, do you know if many out-of-towners come? I met a couple in Taupo who come every Thursday night from Taupo, and I wonder how many others come from out of town, because that is starting to grow. It's starting to grow as a very popular event and thing to do. Would you have any idea? Is that a bit of research a student could do over summer?
Yes, I think that is something. But yes, definitely people do come from out of town. There's no doubt about that. Also, a lot of people come from out of town from other markets to see how our market runs. Over the years, I've been to Wellington. I've helped in Tauranga, Glen Innes and Auckland. So Yes, I do, but I'm not sure how we would count it, but it is something that we're going to do. And I think we're even going to start counting the foot traffic through the market, but we could actually do a little bit of a survey as to where they've come and how often they come. So yes, it could be done. Thank you.
Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Bridget, I can hardly believe it's been 5 years, but so I can't recall the deal that was done for the lighting, but does the proposed extension include also lighting that block, and is that included in your figures for CapEx? I think there was an element of sponsorship in that lighting when it was put in.
So I think that we'll have to do this time. Because it's daylight, we don't really need the lighting as much as we did. Yes, there is a possibility to go back to our sponsors, but we need to get it up and running before I can approach them, because it's at the stage only a concept. So if it became successful, as the market did in the first instance, I'm sure lighting would be required, and I'm sure our sponsors will help us, yes. There's part lighting that would be available, and that would only be to light the activity tents. But it is daylight saving, so we don't sort of need it. The canopy of lights, if the whole exercise became successful and we were going to continuously run it over the winter, yes, we would look at that. Thank you.
Councillor Stewart.
Something that needs to be recognised is the very nature of retailing is changing. And probably in 25 years, the spine of Tanakai Street will not have any retailers in it, because everybody will be doing everything online, home deliveries, that type of thing. I mean, that's conceptual. So what I'm talking about here is I see this as a natural progression. I like what you've done in terms of linking the two and closing the middle so people can sit down. And there may be an opportunity to have a different sponsor for this end of the market, because I know people will pay to have their umbrellas, up for people to sit and bought in and out. So I think this is a brilliant concept. I actually think there is an opportunity to theme the whole of Tanakai Street eventually. But the people that I've seen down at the night market are the backpackers. A lot of backpackers come down there, a lot of foreign tourists. The Kirau Park needs a revamp. It needs, I'm getting some real derogatory comments about it at the moment, in terms of food quality and standard, the positioning of stalls, etc., etc. So I think that we need to get alongside them to see if there's some collaboration that can be made, Madam Chair, and I take your point on that. But I certainly support the concept. I notice, sadly, the poles in the Whitcoll's vision are going to be removed now, but the view shafts will be improved, so that'll be nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Can I just remind councillors, please, just to speak into your microphones. The live streaming isn't picking up our comments clearly enough, so if you could. JP, you want to make a comment on that?
Madam Chair, one of the things that probably wasn't drawn out in Bridget's presentation, which I think is also extremely important, she's mentioned it in the report, is the interest from the shop owners within that block. It was the proposal around the extension was presented to a block champions at a city steering group meeting on the 28th, and there's certainly been some discussion amongst the shop owners in the vicinity of that block who are very excited about the opportunity and are proposing that they would be talking amongst themselves to stay open till at least 7 or 7:30 on the evening of the market, and they really saw this as an opportunity to get back some evening shopping and really leverage off the fact of the market being extended into that block. So there's a significant amount of excitement within the owners within that vicinity, right up to City Focus.
Further to what JP just answered on my question, we wouldn't be stopping the retailers if they wanted to put special tables and sales tables out the front to coincide on, they have to get a permit and all that sort of bizzo. I mean, that would cover their in-store permits would cover those sorts of things. And I think that will add to the vibrancy. I think it's a great idea.
Portia, there's just a question that I wanted to ask you. Is there a possibility that perhaps the design work that's been done or that's currently underway for the City Focus, there might be some way of treating this a little bit similar, or maybe get some ideas, or is that something you might consider looking at?
We can definitely include that in the detailed design so that the design of City Focus on that end is sympathetic to the night market extension as well.
Be good. Thank you. Councillor Maxwell and then Councillor Hunt.
Thank you. I think McDonald's moved too soon, didn't they? They should have stayed there. I'm interested in extending it, and it means I think you can provide entertainment in a more better way. So I note where the stage has been set up down there. I think people are going to appreciate that even more. No? Thank you.
Hunt.
Thank you. I'd actually like to move option 3 and recommendation 2 and 3. And I'd just like to speak to that. I think that this is a really exciting proposal, and I know, just echoing what JP has just said, there are shops on the other side of City Focus, of our plaza, who are planning to open. And they're planning to open not because the night market's going to be outside them, but because they know that people are going to be parking outside their shop to come to the night market. And of course, now that we have made the decision to remove the sails and the big plinths and the pillars in the way, it will be quite visible that there's a night market from, in fact, Rotorua Central as well. So the opportunity will be to whether it's this summer or the following summer, Councillor Sturt, because that detailed planning hasn't been decided on yet, to allow the whole of that city to understand that there is an extension to a night market. And I'm going to be excited to see what the next block asks to happen in front of them. This is a great positive step. It is something unique and different, and we are leaders in the country in night market provision. And a big thank you to Bridget, who has been the absolute driver, the queen of the night market, and long may you continue. So I look forward to the sympathetic treatment with what we know is going to happen to City Focus, so well done.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hunt, for moving 2 and 3, and it's been seconded by Councillor Maxwell. If there's no further discussion, I'd like to put 2 and 3, that the committee recommend to Council to extend the night market south into the next inner city block in a family-friendly format, and 3, that the committee recommend to Council to update the inner city revitalisation strategy to reflect the decision made in item 2. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Thank you. We have one more item before we go adjourn for lunch, and this is the bylaw review. May I have a mover and a seconder, please, that the report bylaw review and the reviews of the traffic bylaw 2008 and the signs on roads bylaw 2008 be received. Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Sturt. It's been moved and seconded. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Thank you. JP, you're going to introduce the report?
Madam Chair, very briefly before I hand over to Amy and Nevin, we've signalled to you previously that there was a number of bylaws that needed to be reviewed over the next 12 to 24 months, so we're systematically moving through those. These are the first 2 which are coming to you. So again, a lot of these are affected by external factors, what's happening legally around the country, and also the changes in legislation. So as I say, these are the first 2 coming through, so I'll hand over to Amy and Nevin to take you through these changes.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning.
Okay. Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Your Worship and Councillors. I have to say this feels like a rather dry topic after our exciting morning of inner city revitalisation, so we'll try to make it interesting between us. I'm thankful here to have Nevin here today. I've been working closely with Nevin on this because it's his team that have been at the coalface in terms of the compliance of our bylaws, and then here, I guess, the feedback from our community on how, whether we need any change so directly. So I'll just give a quick overview. We agreed in March that there were some pressing bylaws to review. We have 2 of those complete, and we'll have the geothermal brought for you here in December, as well as looking at the social impact of gambling policy. But For these two, there's not a huge amount of change that we're proposing. There's a couple of minor amendments just in terms of tidying up a little bit of wording and so on, but essentially three actual changes across the two. So the traffic bylaw, we're suggesting a change there around the regulation of window washers, which has come from direct feedback from the community. The current bylaw only allows for or prohibits the window washing at road intersections. People do find that it's happening, I guess, on stationary parts of road or in shopping centres, and the police don't have an ability to enforce that in those locations under our current bylaw. So we're looking at extending that provision. They do have to be causing either a nuisance or a safety risk, so you're not sort of saying blanket outright you can't do it, but if there's any kind of nuisance or well, yes, I guess as long as they're not causing a nuisance or a health and safety type issue. So that's the traffic bylaw. As I say, it was essentially pretty straightforward. That bylaw does allow for the parking policy, which enables the discussion you've had earlier today, and that all still stands in terms of the appropriate regulatory framework work, which allows you by resolution to set times and pricing, etc., with the parking policy that you spoke to today. And the second bylaw that we're discussing is the Signs on Roads bylaw. So we agreed in March this is one that was due for a review. And there's two, I guess, changes to that. Not drastic, but one of them is this bylaw allows for temporary event directional signage. So it's, you get arrows and your parking and so on in terms of how you find your way to an event. Currently it restricts it to a 5-day event. And I guess we've seen that and said, well, we do potentially have events like Crankworks, which may, that go longer than a 5 days. And why do we have an arbitrary length for that sort of directional signage if we do have a major sort of festival type activity? And the second change is actually currently that bylaw doesn't actually allow for advertising on the road reserve of an event that is coming. It's purely the directional signage only. What we're saying is that we would like the ability to choose by council resolution some set locations in the district where it's appropriate to be advertising community type events. So we would work with NZTA and so on if it's in their domain. But in terms of identifying maybe a half a dozen locations where potentially using a wood first design or something like that, we could actually build a structure which the community could use, an attractive structure that we could use to actually advertise events that are coming, whether it's a musical theatre event, whether it's a sporting event, whether it's some one of our own events and so on. That space could be sort of booked, if you like, for advertising, which would actually also go away to sort of tidying up in terms of some of the signage that appears in different locations on private property, which is not controlled by this bylaw. That's through the district plan. So that's a bit of a summary. Niven, is there anything else you wanted to add before I complete that? Okay, so just as the last point really is that the next steps from here would be to go to special consultative procedure process, and that would be over the next month with a view to come back with hearings and deliberations in December. And to move forward from there. So that's an opportunity for the public, if there's further changes that people do want, obviously, to come and bring that feedback to you.
Thank you. Yes, I'll take our questions now. Your Worship, and then Councillor Webber.
Explain to me, Amy, the difference, because we took an amendment down to Local Government New Zealand on the window washers coming from Western Heights Shopping Centre. It seems to have been solved by the bylaw. Is there still a need for amendment to major legislation?
Through you, Madam Chair. Your Worship, the government hasn't seen fit at this stage to put the changes into the Local Government Act that would give the police the ability to issue infringement notices for the bad behaviour of the window washers. So at the moment, the police have to arrest them, lay in information at court, and go through that long, lengthy process, which understandably they aren't so keen to do. They do pick up the people that are causing nuisance and give them a caution or a warning, depending on where they sit within their system, and then send them on their way.
So are you, supplementary to that, Niven, are you suggesting we keep that pressure on through Local Government New Zealand to get the substantive law change as well as fix the bylaw today.
Very much so. It's a two-pronged approach, and you may have seen in recent media from Auckland,
Yep.
the police up there are laying laying informations at court, which are resulting in judges for recidivist offenders. I think it's around $350 fines, which are in the infringement reign. So it's a bit of a waste of resources, whereas an infringement is an efficient way of dealing with these minor issues.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Weber?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, mine was on the same issue. So you've got on page 125 the clause. So this does cover a number of situations. Has this been through a lawyer to make sure that this is enforceable? And in practical terms, how will we enforce this?
Yes, it has been through a lawyer. I would just note that page 125, it is actually missing a couple of words in there versus the same paragraph on page 124. I just noticed that today. So it should say in any public place, not just anywhere. But yes, it has been through a lawyer and has been checked against the Local Government Act and the Bill of Rights and so on, that it would be enforceable. But as Nevin's outlined, it's the police need to actually make an arrest charge versus issue an infringement notice at this point, which isn't ideal in terms of managing that. Yes, it is. It enables them to take that action if that is occurring, say, at a shopping centre or in another public place where it's is causing a nuisance or an obstruction or a health and safety issue.
So we'll have deemed to have done all that we can do within our powers.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kent?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm quite happy to propose the amendment to clause 28.1 as phrased there. My question is with respect to the definition of temporary event signage. If it's to include entertaining and signs of a competitive nature, does this perchance include yellow and black signs?
I never saw them as temporary event signs, but however, we'll get some clarification on that.
Well, it's directional signage. So if you're having an event, in terms of the direction, so that the signage there is purely around the direct, well, if I'm looking at the right one, there's two elements here. One is the directional signage that's just currently allowed. So, and that's very small signage in terms of, the go here, parking, arrows and so on. So if there was an event held by the yellow and black sign promoters, then that would be fine under the bylaw. The second change we're suggesting is that we have these specified locations whereby the community can advertise events, and if it's an event that fits that definition, then it would be able to be put up with other events.
So then if specifically events, then I'm quite happy to propose the whole motion.
Thank you, Councillor Kent. It's been moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Donaldson. Thank you very much. And that's recommendations 2, 3 and 4. 2, that the minor corrections to the bylaws as set out in this report be made. 3, that it be noted that consideration has been given to the requirements of the Local Government Act 2002 and it is proposed that the bylaws should be amended as set out in this report. And 4, that the statement of proposal and proposed amendments to the bylaws be approved for special consultation and that Council hear and deliberate on any public submissions made to the proposed amendments. Been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary? Thank you. And I now propose that we adjourn for lunch. Till 1 o'clock, yes, and we resume at 1 o'clock. No, we won't. And when we come back, we go into confidential.
Point of order, Madam Chair. Wouldn't it be better to actually announce the end of the public session now before lunch, rather than come back and then announce going into public excluded?
Yes. Well, then may I have then? I can announce it. Yes, that we're going to go into confidential at 1 o'clock when we resume. Thank you, Councillor Kent. It's a long morning, all right.